Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had mutation quirk part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story anonymousamogus from 𝐴3. So let's start the video. Schizophrenia. Excuse me. My son is perfectly healthy, came the defensive reply from 𝐀𝐦. Although the atmosphere of the children's clinic is quite lovely with all the sunshine paintings on the wall, she couldn't help but be pissed at what the doctor was implying. The doctor sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose, and looked at the woman with a serious gaze. Ma'am, I already told you, only 0.3% of the entire human population has a 𝗲𝗏 quirk. And according to official records, the last time that a Japanese citizen was diagnosed with a 𝗲𝗏 quirk was about 50 years ago. And I'm saying that perhaps 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻𝑢 has a 𝗲𝗏 quirk after all, instead of a mental disease. Yes, that's a possibility, but it's the 6th time you went here this month. And every time, when I ask 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻𝑢 to show his quirk, he couldn't activate it. Now tell me, who's the irrational one between us? 𝐀𝐻𝑡𝐻's hold on her purse tightened. While the doctor may have a point, she did hear an unusual sound in the house that one time when 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u said he used his quirk. So, it must be something. She knows her son could tell the difference between his daydreaming and actual events in real life, if only she could capture it on camera. That would solve the debate of whether or not 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u has schizophrenia. In any case, I still recommend for 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u to go to counseling. It would help him lessen his symptoms. And if that doesn't work, I have a few medi. I think we're done here, doctor, she interjected harshly. We'll return once 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u could show his quirk to you. Explosion reached 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u's ears as he was exiting his mom's car. The normally quiet neighborhood was cast in the light of the setting sun. But there was no smoke anywhere, making the boy doubt about the explosion's origin. Although the sound didn't cease, the 4-year-old boy visibly relaxed when he realized where the sound came from. Across the street, a wild-looking blonde was running towards them whilst shouting atop his lungs. 𝐍𝐸. Stop shouting, brat. Be respectful, came the voice of a beautiful, yet equally wild woman. Their antics earned a fond laugh from 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u's mother, and he also found himself giggling lightly. When 𝐀𝐻𝐦 finally reached him, the blonde excitedly asked, So, did you really have a 𝗲𝗏 quirk? I've never seen it, but I bet it's not cooler than mine, boasted the boy as he popped a few explosions in his hands. I dunno. The doctor said that maybe I was just hallucinating. It's hallucinating, sweetie, Mom corrected him with her hand ruffling his hair. And no, you're not hallucinating. We just need to figure out how to activate your quirk without you doing the accidents you described. Even as a kid, 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u knew that the stories he described sounded very much like he just made it up. But it's actually all true. The first time it happened was when he was nearly ice-guyed by a garbage truck in the front of their house. One moment he thought he was going to be in another world, but when he opened his eyes, he was safely back in his room. The second time was when a shelf in their school fell down. 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u was underneath it when it happened, but then he was mysteriously inside the bathroom when he opened his eyes again. And there was the third and fourth time. And then the 5th time when he almost fell down the stairs of their house. Mom was quick to arrive by his side and asked about the loud sound of ripping paper. He didn't hear anything, so he didn't know. But the 6th time his quirk activated was something entirely out of a fantasy world. Even 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u wouldn't believe it happened if he wasn't the one that experienced it. It was in the middle of the night while asleep. He dreamt that he was inside a volcano. The temperature was so hot that 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u's shoes were starting to melt. And then, it happened. He was awoken from his dream when the coldest winds assaulted 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u's small body. He was in a snowy mountain, with its peak covered by clouds. The greenette couldn't handle the cold. His fingers were starting to numb, and the few tears on his eyes almost became ice. He was trapped. In a few seconds, 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u's small frame laid down on the snow, and the last thing he remembered was a bright green haze enveloping him. When he awoke the next day, he was back in his bed, with wet patches on his sheets. He had a cold for a week. Mom said that the wet patches were most probably sweat, but he knew it wasn't. It was melted snow. When he told the story of how it happened, his mother took him to the clinic again, where the doctor told him it was just a hallucination. Are you sure you really have a quirk, 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u? Maybe you're just making it up. 𝐀𝐻𝐦 taunted with his arms around 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u's shoulders. But it's true. Is it really? Oh, what the heck, old hag. 𝐬𝐻𝐴 not a liar, so shut it, brat. Be respectful. And here, Auntie Mitsuki said forcefully, I thought you have something to give to 𝐬𝐻𝐴. His aunt shoved a small box towards 𝐀𝐻𝐦, which made the blonde perk up. Oh yeah, I have something for you, 𝐬𝐻𝑡𝐻u, he said excitedly, detaching from the greenette. 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝑡 took the box and tilted his head questioningly. What is it? Just open it up, come on. The greenette laughed at his friend's insistence and opened the gift. Inside the All Might themed box was a plushie as big as Izuku's head. The familiar blue and red costume doesn't come unnoticed to him as he happily took out the gift. It's a limited edition All Might plushie. He screamed in disbelief. "Mom, look, 𝐻𝐿 gave me a plushie, it's so cool." Izuku's eyes were practically shining as he showed it to his mother. "Yes, sweetie, it's so cool. So what do you say when you're given a gift?" Izuku gasped as if he just forgot something important, which in this case was gratitude. He turned around with eyes still sparkling. Thank you so much, 𝐻𝐿." The boy exclaimed repeatedly and hugged his friend, squishing the plushie between them. It took about 2 seconds for the blonde to hug back, a blush prominent on his face. Satisfied from their short-lived hug, Izuku pulled away to ask his mom, "Mommy, can I play heroes with 𝐻𝐿? I want to use my All Might plushie." His mom put a finger on her chin, as if pondering teasingly. "It's already getting late, sweetie, but if you ask Auntie Mitsuki, she might give permission." It shouldn't be physically impossible for Izuku's eyes to shine brighter, but they somehow did when he heard the implication. He quickly turned around and looked up at his aunt. She was holding a smile that looked like the softer version of 𝐻𝐿. "Auntie, can 𝐻𝐿 come play? We'll just be inside where there's no trouble, and you can also eat dinner with us, together with Uncle Masaru." "Izuku, you can't just invite them like that because you wanted to play." His mother laughed at his desperation. The boy didn't acknowledge what his mom said, instead waiting for a reply from his aunt. When he still didn't receive a reply, he sweetly added, "Pretty please, with puppy dog eyes." You know I can't resist those eyes." Auntie ruffled his hair playfully. "And since you're offering, we'll take you up on that dinner." Let's go, 𝐻𝐿." Izuku ran past his mother that had just opened their front door. His friend chased after him, shouting profanities as they raced towards the greenette's room. That night, they played and played until they were too tired to even physically drag themselves to bed. The 3 adults just looked at the boys fondly and settled them on Izuku's bedroom where they cuddled until morning. Izuku considered himself a patient kid. He always waited despite the long lines he and his mother had to take when they buy groceries. Always waited when his mom told him they'd buy a toy he wanted next week, and waited for the day that he could activate his quirk. But even after almost 2 weeks of image training, his power didn't show up at his command. He was kinda starting to feel silly every time he practiced in a super excited manner. The kids at school were looking at him weird whenever he passes them, but at least 𝐻𝐿 was still supportive of him. He always told Izuku to not worry about his quirk, because according to him, even if you don't have a quirk, I'll just work twice as hard so I can be a hero for the both of us. It comes as no surprise that Izuku cried and hugged his friend so tightly that the blonde almost blasted him away just to breathe again. After that proclamation, Izuku never went anywhere without bringing the All Might plushie his friend gave to him. He slept with it, played with it, and always clutched the gift close to his heart. Even now, as he was eating his favorite strawberry ice cream, he had to put so much effort just to not let even the tiniest speck drip onto his plushie. 𝗬𝗏𝗬drops was the best ice cream parlor that he and his mom ever visited. Apparently, the store opened on the same day that Izuku went to the doctor where he was said to just be hallucinating. Yes, he practiced how to say the word. Needless to say, he also ordered strawberry ice cream that day. And ever since, they've been coming here every Saturday, which was 3 times already. They were seated in one of the corners, quite secluded from the few people that decided to visit today. It was Izuku's favorite spot, and where he would like to sit when he finally brings 𝐻𝐿 here. "Zuku, sweetie, you know that if you put your plushie beside you, it won't disappear, right? His name is 𝐶𝐴RKmight, Mom, and I know that. I just want to hug 𝐶𝐴RKmight all the time cause he reminds me of 𝐻𝐿," said Izuku as he hugged the plushie to prove his point. "But you don't want 𝐶𝐴RKmight to be stained by ice cream, right? Heroes should be responsible, Zuku." The greenette's eyes widened when he heard heroes, and he hurriedly placed the plushie beside him where he could still feel it. His mom smiled fondly at his obedience and continued to eat her order of hazelnut ice cream. The boy has been stressed out lately, growing impatient for his quirk to obey him, which is why his mom keep bringing him in 𝗬𝗏𝗬drops. They served the most delicious and nutritious ice cream near their house. "So, Zuku," she began, "what quirk do you want to have? If you don't have a warp quirk." Izuku perked up at that. "I want mommy's quirk. Pulling things toward me can save so much time. And if I ever get separated from 𝐶𝐴RKmight or 𝐻𝐿, I can just pull them back." The boy thought about all the things he could do with a telekinetic quirk, but he doesn't want to reveal too much. A villain could be listening to them right now, so he have to save some moves as surprises. He also thought about his father's quirk, a fire-breathing one. But honestly, Izuku didn't want to have it. Sure, it was cool, but then he and 𝐻𝐿 would have very similar quirks. How could they cover each other's weaknesses if they're almost the same? "Well, if you want to be strong enough to do this," his mother paused as she pulled his ice cream cup towards her, "you have to eat fast, or the villains will eat your ice cream." She giggled and ate a spoonful of Izuku's order. "No, villain," Izuku responded in an equally dramatic voice as they both laughed at their antics. By the time they finished eating, Izuku was still craving for some sweets, but his mother told him they'd have 𝐀𝐦 for dinner, and he didn't want to risk his stomach being too full. Before standing up from their chosen table, his mom left some tip and he wrote a thank you in one of his unused napkins. The mother and son duo were about to exit the store when a voice interrupted them. Excuse me." The greenheads turned their gaze towards a boy with messy purple hair and blushing cheeks. "Did you need something, sweetie?" his mom asked kindly as he stared at the boy curiously. "My mom told me to give this to you, since you always come back to the store," the shy lad said and extended his hands that were holding something Izuku has no idea. His confusion must show since the boy was quick to explain. "It's an ice cream bar. Strawberry flavored." Izuku's eyes shined at that. An ice cream bar. He never heard of that before. "Oh, that's so sweet of your mother. Tell her we said thank you, and we'll come back again, okay?" his mom said as she graciously accepted. When the bar was handed to him, he didn't hesitate to tear the packaging and looked at the cold pink dessert. "Thank you so much. I'm Izuku Midoriya. What's your name?" The greenette quickly closed the distance between him and the purple head as he stared with starry eyes. "Itoshi Shinsu, my family owns this shop," the boy replied bashfully, blush now more prominent. "Izuku, come along now. I'm sure you'll get to meet Shinsu-kun again soon." He nodded in understanding and went to his mother's side. "Tell your mother we said thank you," his mom said one last time before they went on their way home. "I'm telling you, 𝐀𝐦, it was the best thing I've ever eaten. It's like ice cream and lollipop mixed together." "So it's a popsicle," deadpanned his friend, still leading him towards a clearing in the woods. "No, 𝐀𝐦, popsicles taste different. It was really ice cream shaped like a bar." The blonde waved his hand dismissively, not wanting to debate any longer. A few moments later, they finally reached their destination. It was a small lake, deep enough for a swim, but it still had shallow areas where they couldn't drown. At least that's what 𝐀𝐦 said when he led him to it. Now he had no way of knowing since the area was protected by a wire fence. Was that there the last time? Or, of course not, nerd. Why would I bring you if we can't even enter, dummy? He just shrugged half-heartedly, still hugging 𝐴𝐴𝐻. Knowing 𝐀𝐦, his friend might have broken the fence last time and was simply surprised that someone fixed it. "It has a fence, 𝐀𝐦. We're clearly not allowed there. Let's just head back. I'll introduce you to the owner's kid from the ice cream store." His friend grumbled in frustration, eyeing the fence with hatred. "Besides, you didn't tell me we'd go swimming. 𝐴𝐴𝐻 will get wet, and I don't want to leave him in the dirt." The blonde eventually caved into Izuku's suggestion. "Fine, let's go to the fucking ice cream store. You won't regret it, 𝐀𝐦." He beamed at his friend and took his hand to lead him to Dairy Dewdrops. "They have the best strawberry ice cream. It's the best flavor in the world." "Huh, no way. Chocolate is the best flavor in the world," 𝐀𝐦 declared with popping explosions. "And walk behind me, Zuko. You still can't control your quirk, so I'll protect you for now." The blonde didn't leave any room for argument as he walked in front of the greenette. He just laughed at his friend's insistence. At least now his mind is off of trespassing that property. Even though Izuku really wanted to see the lake 𝐀𝐦 told him about, they shouldn't really intrude on a fenced land. Just thinking about splashing on that cold water seemed more refreshing even compared with eating his favorite ice cream. If they could just somehow pass the fence without destroying it, surely they wouldn't be in trouble. As Izuku kept thinking about it, he failed to notice the coagulated green energy that hovered on his palm. They just kept walking away from the property, until 𝐀𝐦 looked back at him with widened eyes. "Zuko, what's that in your hand?" The boy looked confused, but when he gazed at his glowing hand, he let out a startled yelp and shook it off. The orb was tossed to a nearby tree, but before it could hit the trunk, it expanded to become a green doorway. Both boys were baffled, and for good reason too. "Zuko, did you do that?" "I don't know. What is that even?" Despite 𝐀𝐦's rowdiness, he was still logical when it comes to emergencies. "It kinda looks like a portal." "You finally activated your quirk, Zuko." What appeared before them was an image of a crystal blue lake, cropped by a circular border of green haze. It looked exactly like the place 𝐀𝐦 wanted to show Izuku. "And my quirk. So, is that really a portal?" "Only one way to find out, nerd," said the blonde as he threw a rock towards it. A splash greeted them as the image showed the rock hitting the water's surface, and at the same time, a splashing sound from where they were walking away from. The implications were clear, and when both boys met each other's gaze, they grinned and ran through the portal. After passing it, the doorway closed behind them, but they didn't care about that. 𝐀𝐦 made a big splash as he jumped on the water, while Izuku did his best to shield 𝐴𝐻𝐻 from the water. "𝐀𝐻, you'll get 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐻 wet. Zuko, you can control your warp quirk." "Hey, but it was just lucky." "Then let's test it out," said 𝐀𝐻 as he returned to Izuku's side, dripping wet from his antics. What did it feel like when that green thing appeared? Izuku thought of it, hiding his face on 𝐴𝐻𝐻𝐻 as he closed his eyes. What did it feel like? All he thought of at that moment was that we wanted to go see the lake. I am really didn't feel any. He mumbled with his face still buried on his plushie. Speak clearly, nerd. And stop bringing that plushie around everywhere. You look like a baby. I said, I really didn't feel anything. And I want to keep 𝗃𝗏 close all the time. He makes me feel safe cause he reminds me of 𝐀𝐦. The blonde's comeback died on his throat when he heard the greenette's reply. TCH whatever, he looked away trying to hide his blush. But we still have to try your quirk. Create a portal again. Izuku wasn't sure if he could do it again, but he nodded nonetheless. He closed his eyes and thought of a place, visualized everything down to the tiniest details. The pastel-colored walls, the comfortable chairs, and the faint smell of vanilla in the air, making his emotion a need to teleport instead of a want. When he opened his eyes, another small orb of green energy appeared on his hand that wasn't holding 𝗃𝗏. Whoa, sick. What do I do with it? I don't know, didn't you throw it before? Izuku pondered. If he threw it without care and it hit something before expanding, he doesn't know what would happen. It's a risk he's not willing to take right now. Eyeing a plain path beside him, Izuku threw the energy and it expanded to become a portal. This time it showed the image of 𝗣𝗏𝗪𝗀𝗡's interior, along with a very confused and open-mouthed Shinsu. The impromptu visit from the boys caused quite the commotion within the store. It wasn't the fact that one of them was dripping wet as they stepped into the ice cream parlor, no. It's because every customer present during that time nearly called pro heroes thinking that they're being attacked by villains. It took a lot of convincing from the manager of the store for everyone to calm down. Shinsu-kun's mother, a tall woman with dark purple hair, led the boys to the employees' lounge after the whole debacle. Izuku and 𝐀𝐦 were seated on couch, while Shinsu-kun sat on a stool across from them. Shinsu-kun's mom gave 𝐀𝐦 a towel to dry himself, before taking her phone from the coffee table. Okay, stay here while I contact your parents. Hitoshi, treat our guests well. Thank you so much, ma'am, Izuku said gleefully. When his friend didn't express gratitude, the greenette looked at him pointedly. The blonde looked like he still won't cave in, but he changed his mind when Izuku swapped his weak glare for puppy dog eyes. Thank you, 𝐀𝐦 grumbled finally. It's no problem, sweeties, was the last thing she said as she exited the lounge with a kind smile. The lounge was comfortable and homey, despite being really small. Only the couch and the coffee table filled up the space. The three boys remained silent and awkward once they were left alone. Izuku was happily humming to the theme song of his favorite anime, still hugging 𝗃𝗏. 𝐀𝐦 was busy drying himself, and Shinsu just stared at the two with wide eyes. Can I ask what happened back there? Shut it, extra. 𝐀𝐦, don't be mean, he scolded. Let me introduce you to each other. 𝐀𝐦, this is Shinsu-kun. Shinsu-kun, meet 𝐀𝐦. Hello, I guess, mumbled the timid boy that looked like he didn't care at all. Whatever. Oh, and this is 𝗃𝗏, added Izuku as he showed the plushie he was still hugging. 𝗃𝗏, MHM. He's a gift from 𝐀𝐦, so I wanted to name him something that reminds me of 𝐀𝐦, like the sparks of his quirk. And then I put 𝐷 at the end, just like All Might. It was a clever name if Izuku said so himself. And it was quite easy to remember, so he's proud of it. Shinsu nodded hesitantly, not knowing how to reply. Okay, but how did you guys open that doorway? Oh, that. It's actually my quirk. It's sort of a warping ability. It's first time I was able to control it, actually, said Izuku as he leaned back on the couch he and 𝐀𝐦 were sitting on. That's so cool. The greenette's heart swelled from the praise. Yeah, and now I can finally be a hero just like All Might. No way, Zuko. I'll be the one like All Might. No, I'll be even better than him, protested 𝐀𝐦, whose hair was freshly dried. Izuku stuck his tongue out at the declaration. No way, 𝐀𝐦. Yes way, Zuko. This is getting nowhere. So, Shinsu-kun, he looked away from his blonde friend. Who's your favorite hero? Oh, is it also All Might? Not really. Is it 𝗫𝗫 then? No, I don't really have a favorite hero from the top 10. So you want a loser hero then? That actually suits an extra. 𝐀𝐦, Izuku scolded. He was now visibly glaring. You can't tease someone if their favorite hero isn't in the top 10. Everyone has preferences. His friend simply waved him off in a nonchalant manner. Whatever, nerd. You should apologize to him. Izuku narrowed his eyes with a threatening tone. 𝐀𝐦 didn't look pleased at that. But before the two boys could fight over it, Shinsu interjected. It's fine. I'm used to it by now. What? He's used to it. What does that mean? Izuku didn't understand. Did that mean he hears stuff like what 𝐀𝐦 said? Every day. He had so many questions, but he finally settled on a simple word, why? Shinsu became silent when asked. He looked like he doesn't want to answer it, but something must have changed his mind. Other kids always tell me I have a villain's quirk. Izuku didn't expect that. Calling someone a villain just because of their quirk doesn't sit right with him. But the quirk doesn't make a hero or villain. It's what the user decides to do with them, he argued with fiery determination. Whatever your quirk is, I know you'll be a great hero with it. The purple-headed boy was stunned at what Izuku said, eyes becoming wet from unshed tears. But my quirk is brainwashing. People always avoid talking to me because they said I'm a villain. But that's so cool. It is. 𝐶H. Not a bad quirk for an extra. Both boys didn't expect the blonde to agree. You really think so? 𝗀𝐸 asked, still unsure. Well, yeah. It'll be an annoying quirk to go up against, said 𝐀𝐦 looking away from the other two. It seems like the conversation ended there. Izuku was glad that 𝐀𝐦 was at least accepting of 𝗀𝐸, even though he was still kinda mean. Maybe a bit of ice cream could help ease their tension. 𝗀𝐸-kun, do you still have ice cream bars? I really enjoyed the strawberry flavor you gave me last time. Oh yeah. What flavor do you want this time? Izuku tapped his chin, thinking about it. We don't have money with us right now, but I'll take strawberry and chocolate for 𝐀𝐦. Your mom said she'll call our parents, so we'll ask them for money when they arrive. It didn't take long for the door to the lounge to open. In came 3 women, all bearing different expressions. One was wild yet still smiling, the other one worried, and the last one just looked relieved for everything to be over. Zuko, Brett. Izuku ran excitedly at the sight of his mother. He needed to tell her about his quirk now, or he'll explode. Mom, I can control my quirk now. Izuku's statement stopped both his mother and aunt on their tracks. They looked at him with wide eyes, while he felt like he just won the lottery. WH, really? That's amazing, Squirt. So, could you really teleport? I can make portals. Oh, that's a warp quirk all right, Auntie Mitsuki said as she ruffled his hair affectionately. His mom, on the other hand, looked relieved. Oh, thank God. I knew you were telling the truth, sweetie. Mom kneeled down and hugged him. I hate to interrupt, but I think the blonde boy needs to be changed or he'll catch a cold, interjected 𝗀𝐸's mom. Oh what? Auntie Mitsuki looked pissed. Katsuki, what did you do this time? I didn't do anything, old hack. Zuko and I went to play on a lake. I don't remember giving you permission to go swimming, brat. Izuku and 𝗀𝐸 were both too dumbfounded to even butt in the conversation. Everything was too chaotic. Eventually, he remembered his mother taking him out of the store together with Auntie Mitsuki and 𝐀𝐦 close behind. Izuku waved one last goodbye to 𝗀𝐸 and wiggled 𝐴𝐴𝐻's arms in a way that seemed like he's also waving. By the time Izuku reached home, he realized that he forgot to convince 𝐀𝐦 to have an ice cream bar. Welp, he'd do that next time. The next day, Izuku was brought to Dr. Tsubasa for another session. His mother was so happy that he indeed has a warp quirk, especially since no one in her family has one. Izuku was keen on testing his newfound power, and they found out that he was able to do it now without any problems. So you're back again? The doctor asked skeptically. He looked at the cute, but ultimately plain-looking boy, and the green-haired woman that looked like she didn't comb her hair. If you don't mind following me to the observation room, again, we could confirm if Izuku truly has a warp quirk. Izuku nodded excitedly, a complete contrast to his mother's worried expression. Sure. The mother and son were led to a reinforced room, probably used to contain more destructive quirks from children and adults alike. Izuku curiously looked at the metal walls and targets. He feels like he's inside a hero's training room. It's so cool. The doctor instructed him to remain standing, while he and his mother went into an observation deck that was connected to the room through a window. He was feeling kinda insecure since his mom told him that she'll hold on to 𝐴𝐴𝐻 while he tested his quirk. It was the only time that he was away from his plushie save for when he's taking showers. Izuku-kun, the doctor's voice sounded from a small speaker, you know the drill. To test out your quirk, I want you to go to the other end of the room without passing through the sensors. Izuku nodded as a barrier of reddish light separated the room into two. All he has to do is open a portal that would connect him to the end of the room. As soon as he's done, he'll finally be able to understand his power and be reunited with 𝐴𝐴𝐻. Izuku didn't even need to concentrate, because as soon as he thought of his destination, a green glow appeared on his right hand. He smiled at the familiar energy. Feeling like he already passed the test, he threw the orb in front of him, which expanded to become a portal. From that point, he simply took about 3 steps, and he appeared at the end of the room. I did it. He wasn't dreaming about controlling his quirk yesterday. Izuku looked happily at the 2 adults standing by the window, but their faces of shock caught him off guard. Did I do it wrong? His question shook Doctor from his stupor. Oh no, you did wonderful, Izuku. Now I want to test out other things regarding your quirk. Is that okay? Just make sure to tell me if you're feeling tired or if you sense any discomfort. This way, we'll learn everything there is to know about your power. Izuku was quick to agree, but his mother had reservations. All this time, Dr. Tsubasa never believed that Izuku had a warp quirk, and now he's suddenly interested. Eventually, she reluctantly agreed after Dr. Tsubasa told her that knowing Izuku's limits in a controlled environment would be better than learning them down along the line where things could go wrong. The things they found out were a lot to digest. First off, it seems like Izuku doesn't actually need to open a portal to warp. When he thinks of a place and an orb appears in his hand, he could simply grasp it and it will teleport him to where he wants. Conversely, if he throws the orb at an object, it would also teleport said object to his desired location. After 3 hours of constant use of his quirk, they all decided that 𝐬𝐻𝐸 doesn't have a limit to how much he warps in a given time. Even after intensive tests, the doctor still couldn't find a single drawback of 𝐬𝐻𝐸's quirk. While it worried his mother endlessly, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 was happy to hear that he controls such an amazing power. He couldn't wait to show 𝐀𝐻 everything he's learned. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 was bouncing up and down as he waited for everything to be finished. He wants to go home now, Mrs. Midoriya. Dr. Tsubasa interjected as they stood up to leave. The woman became nervous at the doctor's tone. She sat down, knowing the implications behind that voice. Is something wrong? We've already confirmed that he doesn't have schizophrenia. A sigh came out of Dr. Tsubasa looking at the innocent boy playing with his plushie. Yes, and I apologize for my false assessment. It's just that the way 𝐬𝐻𝐸 described how his quirk worked is very different from how other warp quirks activate. But now that I saw it firsthand, I can say that it's an extremely powerful warp quirk. Whoa, really? The little boy's eyes sparkled. 𝐬𝐻𝐸's enthusiasm was a complete contrast to his mother. The plump greenette had her eyes wide and jaw dropped at the information. So warp quirks don't work the same way as 𝐬𝐻𝐸's. That's news to her. ☆ was worried for her baby, but the look on the doctor's face suggests that it should be considered good news. Is that a good thing? She asked. Dr. Tsubasa chose to ignore the obvious worry from ☆'s voice, and instead chose to address the young boy. Oh yes, 𝐬𝐻𝐸. The current roster of heroes in Japan doesn't include a warp user. If you choose to become a hero, you'll be sought out by big names to be their sidekick, and you could eventually have your own agency. ☍'s eyes were basically sparkling at the statement, but the doctor wasn't done yet. However, he stressed, it also comes with risks. The nature of your quirk is extremely rare, but what's even rarer is how powerful yours is. You already showed it to a few people yesterday, and I saw some posts of it. ☍ stammers. What risks are you referring to, doctor? Well, heroes aren't the only ones that eyes the public for powerful quirks. He says regrettably, sooner or later, you might find yourself a target of villains, ☍ You better watch your back, lest you find yourself in the clutches of 𝐷. ☍ tilted his head at that. What's 𝐷? But he wasn't able to ask since his mom kept talking to the doctor. ☍ wasn't quite sure if he imagined the sadistic glint on the doctor's eyes at the warning. He was kinda creeped out honestly, but his mother didn't seem to notice. ☍ didn't feel like listening to the conversation after what Dr. Tsubasa said. He simply chose to hug 𝐴𝐴 closer. If villains were after him because of his quirk, he's sure that 𝐴𝐴 would give him strength. Besides, 𝐀𝐻 was always by his side. He grew bored because the adults were still talking. It's been hours since he's been in the clinic. What's taking so long? Even 𝐴𝐴 couldn't make everything less boring. ☍ had half a mind that he would just groan loudly to catch the adults' attention, but his mom taught him not be rude. He simply waited with his plushie squished in his arms. When their voices started to dwindle, ☍ perked up thinking they were finally done. And alas, he was right. Mom led him out of the clinic as the doctor waved goodbye at them. He also expressed his rather enthusiastic farewell, but his smile faltered at the grin Dr. Tsubasa gave him. The eerie gesture doesn't even end there as the doctor proceeds to slide his finger on his throat. ☍ doesn't know what that means, but he was too tired to ask Mom right now. They still have an ice cream date with 𝐀𝐻 and Auntie Mitsuki, after all. This might just possibly be the best day in ☍'s life. Dairy Dewdrops was bustling with customers when ☍ and his mom entered. They were accustomed to the peacefulness of the store that it took them by surprise at the amount of people. It must have become more popular as time went by, so ☍ was happy that Shinsu-kun's family business was successful. He planned to say hi to his new friend, but seeing that the store was so busy, maybe his mom didn't even bring him today. No matter, they could just meet again some other time. The pressing issue right now was getting ice cream in his stomach as soon as possible. ☍ waited patiently during the entire quirk checkup. He knew he deserved to have his favorite food right now, pulling his mom eagerly. He finally spotted 𝐀𝐻 and Auntie Mitsuki sitting on the spot that he was very familiar with. ☍, what took you so long? His friend asked exasperated as the Midoriyas settled down on the bench across the table. The doctor wanted to test out the limits of my quirk, ☍ replied, raising his hand up in the air while still holding onto his dear plushie. Auntie Mitsuki bit her lip. But isn't that overworking, ☍kun? I mean, he just learned how to activate his quirk, and you had to test out its limits immediately, she said, addressing ☍, who sat beside ☍. That's my concern too, ☍ sighed. But Dr. Tsubasa was quite insistent. He told me that it's better to test out ☍'s quirk in a controlled environment, rather than him finding out where things could go wrong. Apparently, warp quirks are extremely volatile since they interfere with space or something. That makes sense. So what were your limits, ☍? ☍ puffed his chest with pride. None, he said curtly. It seems like his reply didn't register to the blondes' minds as they stared at him dumbfounded. Thankfully, his mother was quick to elaborate on his declaration. It's true, the doctor tested ☍'s quirk, and even after hours of him using it, he doesn't feel any fatigue. What? The mother and son exclaimed at the same time and stood up from their seats. Izuku giggled at how similar the two were, from their tone of voice down to their expressions. It was almost comical, with 𝐻𝐸 palms also popping off a few sparks and the customers all staring at their loud outburst. The people eventually minded their own business when Mitsuki scowled at them and 𝐸𝐸 smiled apologetically. Maybe keep it down a little, she suggested and gestured at them to sit back down. Sorry about that, but holy shit, kid, you really don't have a drawback to your quirk. 𝐻𝐸, Izuku agreed, beaming. That awesome. Now we can become the greatest hero duo ever, Zuko, 𝐻𝐸 exclaimed, looking at Izuku with fiery determination. The brunette agreed wholeheartedly as he gripped 𝐴𝐸 in his arms. Oh, they'll be the best hero, all right. Izuku already came up with hero names for both of them, like All Might Jr. or Might Boy. He's still trying to come up with more names, just in case 𝐻𝐸 doesn't like them. Maybe a hero name with their quirks on it, like Sparky for 𝐻𝐸 and what should he call himself that relates to his quirk? Portal Boy, Warp Man, those sound so lame. Oh, how about he took some inspiration from the pre-quirk superhero movies he liked to watch, like Blink and Nightcrawler from X-Men. Both have teleportation powers, and Izuku's quirk was very similar with Blink's. Sweetie, could he get away with naming himself like them? Izuku, but it doesn't really make sense for Izuku. What does Nightcrawler even mean? He should ask Mom later. Zuko, Blink on the other hand, he could understand. The hero named herself that way because her portals make a cute blinking sound when they open. But maybe it could also relate to how you just blink and then she's gone. Her teleportation was slower than Nightcrawler though, so it also doesn't make sense. Zuko, should he relate his name to the color of his quirk then? He might come up with something catchy that way. Just like that famous villain from the Spider-Man movies, 𝐬𝐸 Green Goblin, he screeched out startled. I've never heard of that flavor before, honey. Is that newly added? His mom asked, confused. Huh? Izuku looked at her dumbfounded. Auntie was asking what flavor you want? Nerd. You didn't even hear, did you? You were mumbling the whole time. Oh, sorry. Izuku scratched his head sheepishly. I want a strawberry ice cream bar, please. The same flavor again. You sure that you won't grow tired of it? His mom frowned. Nope, he said, popping the pea. Well, if you insist, Mom sighed fondly. Mitsuki-san, I'll go buy the ice cream, it's my treat. Nonsense, the blonde woman exclaimed. It's my treat, and you'll stay here seated. You had an exhausting session with the doctor, the blonde said and walked away before 𝐸𝐸 could argue. The kids ignored their mother's conversation and started up their own. What were you mumbling about, Zuko? That was the longest mumbling I've ever seen from you, so it must be something good. I was thinking about our hero names, Izuku happily confessed. TFFT, you were thinking so hard about that. I already decided on my name. Whoa, really, 𝐻𝐸? What is it? Izuku waited as his friend paused for dramatic effect. Was it something cool? Maybe something mysterious? Oh, maybe something related to 𝐻𝐸's quirk, King Explosion Murder, or maybe something very violent. Wait, what? Izuku snorted. What? When 𝐻𝐸 made a confused face as if he didn't say something so funny, Izuku laughed. He was cackling so much that his stomach began to hurt and he had to hug his plushie closer to ease the strain. Stop laughing, Zuko. He laughed harder. The brunette couldn't take the command seriously with 𝐻𝐸's face redder than a tomato. Okay, settle down, sweetie, Mom instructed, making circular motions on his back. You're becoming breathless. It took a few more moments before he finally stopped laughing. Sorry, 𝐻𝐸, although he doesn't look apologetic at all. Why'd you even laugh, nerd? 𝐻𝐸 grumbled, face still red. Because you can't name yourself that, 𝐻𝐸. It's too violent. Huh. His friend smacked the table, looking exasperated. He's right, Katsuki-kun. You should choose a hero name that's friendlier, or something even cooler. I'm sure you'll come up with something. Mom smiled kindly. 𝐻𝐸's face visibly became softer. Okay, the blonde mumbled. But what name did 𝐴𝐸 come up with, Zuko? He turned to the shorter boy again. I bet it's even lamer than mine. I want Might Boy, or All Might Jr. It was 𝐻𝐸's turn to laugh. That's way worse than mine, nerd. He pointed with crinkling eyes. What? He dragged playfully. It sounds like All Might's name, so it should be cool. That's exactly why it's lame, Zuko. It's too similar with All Might's. You should be original. Izuku pouted. He was still thinking of a hero name, but he thought that the ones he came up with were really good. Okay, that's enough bickering, you little squirts. Auntie Mitsuki suddenly interrupted. She slid the tray she was holding on their table and handed everyone their orders. Time to eat these cold delights before they melt? Yeah. 𝐻𝐸 had chocolate ice cream, Mom had Rocky Road, and Auntie had cookies and cream. All of them had their ice cream served on glass bowls, while Izuku's strawberry ice cream bar was placed on a porcelain plate with a vanilla drizzle on top. The brunette didn't waste time as he took the bar and took his first bite. It tasted just as heavenly when Shinsu-kun first gave him one. Izuku watched 𝐻𝐸 happily. who had a tiny smile on his face. His friend must have also liked his order, but was too stubborn to admit it. Their parents were talking in hushed whispers, also enjoying the ice cream. He liked this atmosphere. Although he still liked to play heroes with 𝐀𝐦 better, the peacefulness of everyone he loves also makes Izuku's heart flutter. So, what were you two little boys bickering about when I got here? Auntie Mitsuki asked while twirling her spoon like a baton. I'm not little old hag, I'm taller than Zuko. So, he's the little boy. Izuku, who was happily eating his ice cream bar, paused mid-bite and pointed at 𝐀𝐦. Hey, that's not true. We're the same height. No, I'm taller, Zuko. Last time we checked, I had 1 centimeter on you. But that was a week ago. I've been eating ice cream, so I should be taller than last time. Ice cream doesn't make you taller, honey. His mom interjected, holding a laugh. But ice cream has milk, and milk makes kids taller, Izuku argued. His claim made his mother think for a bit. I'm not so sure, honey. Mitsuki, does ice cream help us grow taller? Beats me. Auntie shrugged and ate another spoonful of ice cream. Anyway, no one answered my question. She pointed menacingly with her spoon, making Izuku giggle at the silliness of her threat. What were you two big boys bickering about earlier? We were just coming up with hero names, 𝐀𝐦 grumbled. Oh, what did you and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 come up with? None of your business, old hag. Izuku flinched at the slap his friend received a second later. I told you to be respectful, Katsuki. Now try again, Auntie said softly, although the look in her eyes were anything but soft. Mommy, can I go to the bathroom? His question made everybody silent in the table. I'm sorry, Izuku. Did Auntie make you uncomfortable? The greenette was confused at first, but then he realized that he just interrupted the mother and son's argument. Oh, I just wanted to go to the bathroom. The last time I peed was before we left the house, he admitted with a blush. Oh, do you want me to go with you, sweetie? His mom wiped her face with paper napkins, ready to go with him at a moment's notice. No, it's okay. I have 𝐴𝐴𝐸 with me, I'll be fast. Izuku beamed at them brightly before waddling towards the bathroom. Despite being small, he actually walks faster than most kids around his age. And it's one of the things 𝐀𝐦 likes about him. His friend once told him, I don't want to waste time, Zuko. So, you better walk fast when we're together, and the greenette took it to heart. Izuku also didn't like to waste time, so he was quite fast in the bathroom and he was walking back to their table in no time. As he passed by the counter, Izuku almost choked on his spit when he saw a very cute picture frame of Shinsu-kun. It was hidden behind those cardboard advertisements, so he failed to notice it until now. The purple-headed boy looked so happy in the photo as he was squished between his parents' hugs. He wanted to meet with Shinsu-kun again and play heroes with him. Izuku hasn't seen that smile in person yet. The boy always looked meek and quiet. He absent-mindedly walked backwards to their table, whilst holding 𝐴𝐸𝐸 tightly. The greenette failed to realize that his longing for Shinsu caused a coagulation of green energy to hover around his hand. As he continued to walk backwards, his back hit a hard wall, causing him to flinch and letting his quirk touch the plushie he was hugging. There was a small interval where everyone in the store became silent when they heard the sound of ripping paper. The quiet didn't last long as Izuku loudly cried, 𝐴𝐸𝐸's gone. He desperately tried to look around him, hoping that he just dropped his plushie. Tears were blurring his vision and he could feel his breath shortening. Someone was talking to him, someone was shaking his shoulders, and then someone finally picked him up. 𝐴𝐴𝐸𝐸. It's okay, little green bean, don't cry. The soothing voice of a boy Izuku hasn't heard before tried to calm him. Izuku noticed that they were outside the store now. He didn't even think about being kidnapped. He just snuggled closer to the arms that held him as he tried to dry his face with his shirt. He was about to apologize to the boy for staining his clothes with snot, when Izuku realized that he wasn't being carried by a person. Izuku was actually lying atop a very fluffy cloud. He was on the sidewalk now, just outside the store. Despite it being 1 in the afternoon, there weren't many people walking around in this part of the town. Izuku felt insecure crying in public, so he tried to calm himself and assess the situation. He was sitting on a cloud for some reason, and 3 boys he's never met before were coddling him. The absurdity of everything makes him stop crying as he examined the cloud curiously. When he became silent, the 3 teen boys standing in front of him looked worried. He wanted to ask about the cloud quirk, but then his mom, Auntie, and 𝐀𝐦 walked out of the store, looking worried, angry, and relieved at the same time. Zuko, my baby. His mom practically ran towards him and scooped him into her arms. You really think you can kidnap Izuku? Huh? You little punks. Wah, how dare you make my little baby cry? Ma'am, that's not what happened. I'll blast you away, you big bullies. That is one aggressive little boy. Everyone kept talking and yapping. It hurt Izuku's ears. And he doesn't even have a hearing quirk. Please stop, he screamed with eyes closed and ears covered. When no sounds were uttered for a few moments, he risked opening his eyes to see everyone looking at him. That's good, Mom. I'm not being kidnapped. They're not bad guys. They actually put me on this very fluffy cloud. It's even better than my bed, he said with a wide smile. His tears were all dried now, and the only evidence that he cried were his red eyes. His mom looked at him reluctantly. But I thought. Izuku shook his head sternly at his mother's false accusation. Can you put me back on the cloud? It's really comfy. He trailed off shyly. The taller Greenette sighed and complied with Izuku's request. When he looked comfortable on the cloud, she turned her accusatory gaze towards the three boys. Explain what happened, please. They looked at each other unsurely, and then the boy with wavy light blue hair stepped forward. We were just getting in line to buy ice cream when the little green bean bumped into us. It's no big deal, of course, but he shouted that he lost 𝗏𝗏 or something, and then he started crying. It's 𝗏𝗏, but what's that to do with you getting him outside? Mitsuki's voice was surprisingly calm. The little kid was loudly crying inside a store. We brought him outside so he doesn't disturb other customers. It's just logical. It was the black-haired boy that spoke this time. Izuku thought that he sounded like an older Shinsu-kun. Why'd you even cry, Zuko? Were you hurt? 𝐻𝐿 asked worriedly. Izuku looked at his friend and his heart swelled at 𝐻𝐿's sincerity. He's really the bestest friend ever, and he just lost the gift his friend gave him. His guilt allowed tears to drop down from his eyes again. I'm so sorry, 𝐻𝐿. 𝗵𝗃 disappeared and I don't know how. I don't know where he went, and he was a limited edition plushie. I'm so sorry. Izuku struggled to dry his eyes using his shirt. 𝗵𝗃, that's it. You really are a crybaby, aren't you, nerd? The Greenette sniffled. But 𝗏𝗏 was a gift from 𝐻𝐿. He didn't even have his plushie for a month yet, and he already lost it. Hey, don't cry, little man. We'll help you find 𝗏𝗏, okay? We're heroes and that's what heroes do. The blue-haired boy smiled at Izuku reassuringly. The boy couldn't believe what he just heard. He was so focused on his lost plushie that he didn't notice the three boys wearing what looks like hero costumes. You're really heroes. His eyes were sparkling in excitement. Yeah, we are, little dude. The blonde teen agreed. His voice was a little louder compared to a normal shout, which made people look at their direction. One glare from Auntie Mitsuki and the black-haired boy was all it took for the civilians to look away. I've never heard of you before, so you must be loser heroes. Izuku's eyes went wide at his friend's insult. 𝐻𝐿, be respectful, brat. Izuku sighed thankfully that Auntie reprimanded 𝐻𝐿 for his rudeness. A playful ruffling of his spiky hair was all it took to silence him. We're not heroes yet. Still heroes in training, interjected a bored voice. Which hero school do you go to? Izuku asked as he shifted on the cloud for a more comfy position. The blonde and blue-haired boy turned to each other, grins plastered on their faces. We're from UA High, plus Ultra. The duo laughed at their antics while their other friend just groaned in a very disinterested manner. I need a nap. His mom cleared her throat and addressed the three. I'm sorry for the false accusations. I'm very protective of him since little Zuko here can be very sensitive. Mom, he hissed red-faced. It's no problem, ma'am. Like I said, we'll help Zuko find his plushie, said the blue-haired teen. Actually, how did it disappear? Little green bean. Can you tell us what exactly happened? His voice was so soft. Izuku thought it sounded just like when his mom lulled him to sleep. Before Izuku could answer, the glass door of Dairy Dewdrops opened again. Shinsu-kun's mother walked out with a phone pressed on her ear as she talked to the person on the other end of the call. The others also looked at her quizzically, and Izuku tilted his head in question when the lady gave him the phone. It's Satoshi, he wants to speak to you. His eyes widened for a moment before he took the phone and pressed it on his ear. Hello, Midoriya-kun. Your plushie, I think you called him 𝗏𝗏. Anyways, he appeared beside me while I was napping. Did you do this? Izuku's jaw dropped. So that's where it went. He was thinking about Shinsu-kun when his quirk activated. He shifted on the cloud uncomfortably. Yeah, it was an accident. I'm so sorry I woke you up. No, it's fine. Shinsu-kun's voice sounded so tired. Do you want to have it back now? I can ask Dad to go with me. Is it really okay? I miss 𝗏𝗏, but you sound tired right now. That's fine, his friend insisted with a yawn. There was a sound of talking at the other end of the line. Probably Shinsu-kun talking to his dad. After a few moments, his friend talked again. Dad said we'll be there in 15 minutes. I have to prepare now, bye. The call abruptly cut after that. Izuku handed the phone to the purple-headed woman. Shinsu-kun said he'll come here with his dad. 𝗏𝗏 teleported beside him because of my quirk. Oh, well, you can wait inside until they arrive. I told my employee not to clean your table yet, since you haven't finished eating. Thank you so much, Shinsu-san, 𝗀𝐻𝐿 bowed lightly. Let's go now, we've caused enough trouble already. Auntie Mitsuki and 𝐻𝐿 entered first, while his mom bowed at the three boys. I'm so sorry again for the misunderstanding. It's really no trouble, ma'am. I'm glad we could help. The blue-haired teen smiled again. We should also get back inside. We haven't ordered our ice cream yet, the blonde exclaimed, but then a loud alarm cut off his excitement. It was the black-haired boy's phone. Looks like we're late. Let's get going. But our ice cream, we can have it tomorrow. But I'm craving it right now. The blue-haired teen ignored his friend's bickering and walked closer to Izuku. He took out something from his hero costume and handed it to the boy. "This is my call card. If you need help or just want to have fun, don't hesitate to call me. All right, little green bean." 𝐬𝐻𝐸 looked at the card and he giggled. It's not an official call card at all. The teen must have just took a cardboard and drew doodles of clouds, with a telephone and cell phone number at the bottom. The most eye-catching part were the words �loud_cloud. They were colored in blue and orange. It must be the boy's hero name. Before 𝐬𝐻𝐸 could ask though, he already joined his friends bickering. The fluffy cloud that 𝐬𝐻𝐸 was lying on gradually disappeared until he was settled on the ground gently. He chuckled at the silliness of the trio that haven't stopped quarreling yet. Hop on show. It'll be faster this way. The blue-haired teen, �loud_cloud, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 thought, was sitting on another cloud together with the blonde I'd rather walk. But we'll be late if you don't hop on. It's illegal Quirk use. Come on, we have our provisional licenses. I'd rather not. Zashi, take him. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 could no longer stop his laughter as he cackled when the blonde teen pulled the black-haired boy on the cloud and trapped him. He was still laughing as the trio floated away towards their destination. �loud_cloud looked back at him and smiled at his happiness and gave him a thumbs up. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 smiled back and also gave a thumbs up before waving cheerfully. When they finally disappeared from sight, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 looked up to his mother, Mom. She was looking at him fondly and ruffled his hair. "Yes, sweetie. I think I have a new favorite hero." The next day, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 had a playdate with 𝐀𝐦 and 𝗀𝐈. His mom dropped him off in dairy dewdrops before coming to work. Just like always, he ordered strawberry ice cream bar while 𝐀𝐦 ordered the chocolate-flavored bar. "So what do you think? It's the best, right? And not at all a popsicle like you insisted." He knew that his friend didn't like to admit he's wrong, so he felt a little guilty when 𝐀𝐦 nodded. "Yeah, sure. Whatever, Zuko. Do you not get tired of always ordering strawberry?" 𝗀𝐈 piped up as he walked away from the counter, holding another ice cream bar for himself. They were seated on the table nearest to the counter since they were the only people inside. It was quite peaceful as they waited for 𝗀𝐈's mom to finish whatever it was she's doing. Apparently, the store had a big shipment today, so it was super important. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 pondered for a bit. "No, not really. It's my favorite after all." 𝗀𝐈 shrugged and sat down on the chair opposite from 𝐬𝐻𝐸 and 𝐀𝐦. When he finally opened the packaging of his ice cream, the greenette gasped as if he saw something magical. "What's that flavor? I've never seen purple ice cream before." "Yeah, me neither," 𝐀𝐦 agreed. "Oh, this." Mom said it's the sample for the new ice cream flavor she ordered. "It's called 𝐬𝐸. 𝐬𝐸," 𝐬𝐻𝐸 tried saying. "I've never heard of that before." She said it's a flavor from the Philippines. 𝗀𝐈 struggled to remember. "I forgot. You could ask Mom if you're really curious though," the purple-headed boy said and bit onto his ice cream bar. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 watched as his friend's eyes widened. "Is it good? It's even better than vanilla." 𝐬𝐻𝐸 was at awe. "But isn't vanilla your favorite flavor?" 𝗀𝐈 shook his head. "Not anymore. 𝐬𝐸's my new favorite." "Huh? You change your mind so easily." "Hypno? What's a hypno?" the purple head asked. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 gasped knowing what it meant. "𝐀𝐦 gave you your own nickname. And it's hypno. Why though?" "'Cause it's short for hypnotize. Keep up." 𝗀𝐈 made a no sound before he resumed eating. The three boys were halfway finishing their cold treats when the purple head asked again, "Should I also give you a nickname, then?" "You can just call him 𝐀𝐦, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 shrugged. "Don't ever call me 𝐀𝐦, the blonde growled. 𝗀𝐈 pondered for a moment before snapping his fingers. "I can call you 𝐀𝐦. "That's so cute." 𝐬𝐻𝐸 squealed while 𝐀𝐦 just grumbled. "And you can call me Zuko. Can I call you Toshi, then?" The purple-headed boy blushed at the nickname and nodded. Now all three of them had nicknames. They were officially best friends and 𝐬𝐻𝐸 couldn't wait to play. The last time he played with his quirk was yesterday at the doctor's office. Even though his mom told him not to use his quirk since it's not registered in the government yet, he knows 𝐀𝐦 would insist. And it's not like they'd use it for something bad. He could see both Toshi and 𝐀𝐦 buzzing with excitement, and he was too. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 was finishing up his ice cream when the entrance to the store opened, and came three very familiar faces, making the greenette gasp in excitement. Before anyone could react, he allowed his quirk to form an energy on his hand and grasped it. There was a sound of tearing paper before he reappeared by the feet of the blue-haired teen from yesterday. "�loud_cloud, you came back." He giggled at the startled sounds that the three teens made. "Oh hey, it's the little green bean. How are you doing?" "I'm fine," he replied with his arms hugging the teen's legs. "Was that your quirk?" the blonde teen asked. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 looked at him and nodded enthusiastically. "That's awesome. Zuko, what's a �loud_cloud?" "It's his hero name 𝐀𝐦, he informed with a bright smile. "Am I right, Mr. Cloud?" "Sure you are, little green bean." "Wait, did we not introduce ourselves yesterday?" The blonde teen gasped overdramatically. "We totally forgot to introduce ourselves." "You're idiots," the black-haired boy sighed. "Hey, you don't get to say that when you also forgot." 𝐬𝐻𝐸 would have felt flustered if the teens kept bickering, but thankfully, They're the only ones in the store because of the early hours. He disconnected himself from Loud Cloud's feet and happily interrupted, "I'll introduce us first." His loudness made everyone else in the store go quiet. "This is 𝐀𝐦, and this is �Toshi." He pointed at his friends respectively who were now standing beside him. "Oh, and this is �Sparkmight," he added as he created a small portal just enough to fit his hand and grabbed his plushie that he put atop their table. The blue-haired teen crouched down to Izuku's level and ruffled his hair playfully. "Aw, little �Sparkmight is so cute. And by the way, you can call me 𝐲𝐵RO, or Loud Cloud, or whatever you want. And right here is Hisashi Yamada, at your service." The blonde also crouched down and shook each of the little boy's hands. "You can just call me Zashi if you want." When the two energetic teens finished their introductions, they looked at their other friend expectantly. The black-haired teen sighed and whispered something under his breath. "What did he say?" 𝐀𝐦 voiced. "I said, my name's Shoto Aizawa." His voice sounded so bored and tired, and he remained standing, unlike his friends that were crouching down. All of the boys, young and teen, blinked and collectively thought, "That's it. Come on, Sho. You can be more creative than that," 𝐲𝐵RO-san encouraged. "I don't get why we need to be creative in introducing ourselves to kids." Zashi-san and 𝐲𝐵RO-san just sighed and looked at the three boys apologetically. "Don't mind him. He's just grumpy cause he didn't have his coffee this morning." This made Izuku giggle. "So, why are you guys here anyway?" "You're the first customers apart from us," 𝐀𝐦 inquired. "We needed some stuff done in UA. And then we came here to get ice cream," said Zashi-san. "Yup. So, what do you recommend, Zuku?" 𝐲𝐵RO-san asked. The boy didn't even hesitate. "Ice cream bars. They're easy to eat and super delicious too." "Well then, what flavor do you think's the best?" "Strawberry." 𝐲𝐵RO-san gasped excitedly and lifted Izuku up to his arms. "No way. That's my favorite flavor too." "Really?" he confirmed with sparkling eyes, and the teen nodded. This made Izuku's smile wider. "My favorite flavor's mango," Zashi-san proudly proclaimed as he stood up. "I hate chocolate the least," grumbled Aizawa. "Fuck yeah, chocolate's the best." Language. "Katsuki-kun," Toshi's mom interjected as she stepped out of the employees' lounge. "Sorry, I had to get things done. What would you like to order today?" She addressed the teen boys. "Mango ice cream bar please." "Strawberry ice cream bar for 𝐲𝐵RO-san, Shinsu-san." Izuku happily ordered for his favorite hero while still being carried. "Izuku-kun, I told you to call me Auntie Atsuko, and that goes for you too, Katsuki-kun," she playfully scolded, which made the teen boys chuckle lightly. "And what would you like, sir?" They all turned to look at Aizawa, who was eyeing the menu like it just killed his pet cat. "Well, chocolate's the only one that doesn't make me want to puke," he grumbled disappointingly. "You should try 𝐲𝐬." Everyone turned their heads at Toshi, which made the boy blush from attention. I mean, 𝐲𝐬 might like it if you try. It's actually very good." "I've never heard of that before," Aizawa said. "𝐲𝐬's actually one of our new flavors, although it's not on the menu yet. It's a flavor native to the Philippines. And it's actually the shipment that I'm handling right now. Would you like to try it?" Shin's Auntie Atsuko informed. "I guess I'm getting 𝐲𝐬 ice cream bar then." Auntie Atsuko typed in their orders at the cash register and handed them their orders while 𝐲𝐵RO-san paid for the treats. When Auntie finished the transaction, she sighed and looked at the boys apologetically. "Kids, I'm so sorry, but you have to wait a little longer, okay?" A chorus of disappointed ohs were heard from the kids. "My employee's running late, so I can't leave the store right now. Not to mention that I'm still handling the shipment." "Are you taking them somewhere, ma'am?" 𝐲𝐵RO-san asked as he gave the ice cream orders to Zashi-san. Auntie sighed again. "Yeah, I'm supposed to watch over them while they play at the park a few blocks away. I already promised 𝐀𝐦 and Mitsuki, but I didn't think that I'd be this busy today. We can watch over them." Izuku perked up at the idea, but Auntie looked skeptical. "Don't worry, we have nothing else to do for today and you can totally trust us," 𝐲𝐵RO-san smiled reassuringly. "And just to ease your mind, and act as insurance." The blue-haired boy trailed off as he patted his jacket and pants, looking for something. His face lit up when he grasped something inside his back pocket and gave it to the purple-haired woman. "It's my UA ID. It has my contact information, and you can call the school if we don't bring the kids back by." "Until what time are they allowed?" 1 p.m. "Yup, by 1 p.m. Auntie Atsuko still looked skeptical, but for an entirely different reason. "Is it really okay? I know you're heroes in training, so you must only have very few days to relax." "It's really no big deal, ma'am. We love hanging out with kids." "Speak for yourself, Zashi," Aizawa complained with a bored tone. He was ignored by everyone though. "Well, if you're sure." She trailed off and eventually smiled when she saw how excited the three kids looked. "Then, next time you come and buy ice cream, it'll be free of charge." The blue-haired teenager smiled and bowed, before creating a fluffy cloud. He ushered the kids to sit on it, and Izuku practically bounced in excitement. 𝐀𝐦 and Toshi also looked eager to ride on the cloud, but they weren't as blatant as the greenette. Zashi-san and Aizawa opened the door for them as the cloud carried them outside. People kept throwing gazes at them as they went on their way to the park. It didn't seem to bother the 3 older teens, so 𝐲𝐸 also didn't mind them. At some point, the teens began eating their ice cream bars, and 𝐲𝐸 spied their reactions. As expected, both 𝐷𝐵RO-san and 𝑍𝐴𝐵-san were happy with their chosen flavors. 𝐶𝐲-san though looked surprised at his ice cream. 𝐲𝐸 doesn't know if it's a good reaction or not, but at least he didn't puke it out. While they floated on the cloud, 𝐲𝐸 kept asking questions about their quirks. Turns out, 𝐷𝐵RO-san could create bigger clouds with his quirk, and 𝐲𝐸 wanted to see them. 𝑍𝐴𝐵-san's quirk was also really cool. He could create sound waves to attack villains, and he said that the support department just added upgrades to his equipment. But what really made 𝐲𝐸's jaw drop, as well as 𝐀𝐦's and �Toshi's, was Aizawa's quirk. "I can erase quirks if I look at the person." He said it so casually as if it wasn't a really cool thing. What? The rest of the way was just the little kids asking for their quirks to be cancelled by Aizawa. The black-haired teen reluctantly agreed when he realized that the kids wouldn't stop pestering him unless he complied. It was no secret that Aizawa was the happiest of them all when they reached the park. Not only was he free from the kids' questions about his quirk, but he could also finally brood by himself at the secluded tree he was eyeing. Meanwhile, 𝐷𝐵RO and his 𝑍𝐴𝐵 were playing mother hen as they watched over the kids like a hawk. 𝐲𝐸, 𝐀𝐦, and 𝗏𝐻I went to every plaything they could find in the playground. The other kids in the playground didn't bother playing with them, knowing how rough 𝐀𝐦 could be. Yet even though they were basically avoided, the 3 friends didn't fail to have fun under the mellow sun. They had fun at the tallest slide, which was about 3 Aizawas tall. The greenette was too scared to slide down at first, despite him clutching his plushie. 𝐀𝐦 and 𝗏𝐻I kept telling him it's safe since they already slid down. But his fear didn't vanish. Eventually, 𝐷𝐵RO-san intervened and put fluffy clouds all around the slide in the unlikely event that 𝐲𝐸 falls. He happily slid down after that, and even repeated it a couple more times. 𝐲𝐸 felt safe seeing the clouds. Then, they went to the swings where 𝐷𝐵RO-san pushed the swing for 𝐲𝐸. 𝐀𝐦 looked irritated that 𝐲𝐸's swings were higher than his, but 𝗏𝐻I, who was the one that pushed the swing for him, didn't have enough strength. 𝑍𝐴𝐵 volunteered to swing 𝐀𝐦, while Aizawa got roped into swinging 𝗏𝐻I. The 3 teens got into a little competition to see who could push the swing highest, and it was easily won by Aizawa. 𝗏𝐻I almost broke his legs when he was flung from the swing, but luckily, 𝐷𝐵RO-san caught him with a cloud. The other kids on the playground were ushered away by their parents when they saw the almost fatal accident. With lunchtime approaching, all the other children were taken home and it was only the 6 boys left. Once the kids grew tired of the playground facilities, they took it upon themselves to have fun. Namely, by experimenting with 𝐲𝐸's quirk. 𝐀𝐦 and 𝗏𝐻I somehow found a rope while playing and it became the subject of their objective. The mission: tie 2 trees together that are really far apart. They chose the tree where Aizawa was napping, unaware of the kids that were silently laughing, and another tree that gave shade to 𝐷𝐵RO-san and his 𝑍𝐴𝐵 as they sat on a park bench. They tied a sloppy knot on Aizawa's tree, and then 𝐲𝐸 created a portal that connected to the other tree. What's the point of this game again? 𝐷𝐵RO chuckled as 𝐲𝐸 handed him 𝐴𝐵 for safekeeping. Nothing, 𝑍𝐴𝐵. They're just having fun. When they were finally finished with what they're doing, 𝐀𝐦 proudly exclaimed, "Mission accomplished." The trees were now connected physically, despite there being a gap between the trees courtesy of 𝐲𝐸's portals. If someone saw them, they might have been reported for illegal quirk use. But thankfully everyone else had already gone home or ate lunch somewhere. It's only 12 p.m., so they still have an hour to play before they're taken back by the teens to dairy dewdrops. So, 𝐲𝐸 trailed off as his friends kept tugging at the knots to make them tighter. What do we do now? We already finished the mission. 𝐀𝐦 thought about it, and scowled when he didn't come up with anything. I dunno, I'm bored with this shit. Language, 𝗵𝘃𝐸. The sudden voice coming from the other side of the portal startled the 3 kids. 𝐶𝐲-san, we thought you were asleep, 𝐲𝐸 said. I was, but the rustling of leaves and your quiet laughter woke me. Oh, sorry about that, 𝗏𝐻I-san. 𝗏𝗏𝐻I bowed apologetically, but the black-haired teen just waved him off. Are you brats hungry yet? 𝐲𝐸 tried to reply, but his mind became hazy all of a sudden. He struggled to stand straight and his eyes were beginning to close. In an attempt to stabilize himself, he clings at the closest person he could touch and hugged them tightly. He just hoped they aren't uncomfortable from 𝐲𝐸 hugging them unexpectedly. Someone pulled him away though, and he felt his body going slack as he was laid on something super soft. It must be 𝐷𝐵RO-san's cloud, he thought. If it was, that means he's safe. There was no need to worry, so 𝐲𝐸 allowed himself to succumb to unconsciousness. Then everything faded to black. 𝐷𝐵RO always regarded himself as a competent student, and expected himself to be an equally competent pro hero. So, when he saw 𝐲𝐸 shutting his eyes and hugging the purple-haired boy like a lifeline, he knew something was wrong and acted accordingly. Aizawa was about to walk through the portal, unaware of the child's current predicament. As quickly as he could, 𝗵𝗲 sent a dense cloud to push his friend away from the closing portal. Even a slight misstep would have severed his friend cleanly in half rather than his cloud. "What the hell?" 𝐬𝐻𝐸 exclaimed, standing up. "Hey, Zuko, what's wrong?" The blonde kid, Katsuki he remembered, asked worriedly. The greenette didn't respond though. Instead he just hugged Toshi even tighter. "What's wrong with Zuko?" 𝗵𝗲 grimaced, not knowing what's wrong. "I don't know, but he might be having a headache, so I'm going to put him on a cloud, okay? Can you help me remove Zuko?" Toshi nodded and gently peeled off Izuku's arms around him. Once they were disconnected, 𝗵𝗲 laid the boy on the fluffiest cloud he could make. "He's ice cold," he whispered when he touched the boy's forehead. "I need to take him to a hospital." "Is Zuko sick?" the two little boys asked simultaneously. 𝗵𝗲 didn't get to reply since Aizawa beat him to it. "No, he's not. Izuku's just sleepy, so now he needs to go to the hospital to have some sleep." "But aren't hospitals only for sick people?" Toshi said shyly, to which Katsuki agreed with a small yeah. Damn, these kids were sharp. Most children wouldn't even question the authority of people way older than them. They must be extremely protective of the green bean. But he couldn't have them being disobedient now. He knew that taking Izuku to the hospital was priority, but they couldn't just not explain what's going on to the other two. They might be stressed about it. "Don't worry, little mans. The doctors will just help Izuku sleep better and determine why he fell asleep suddenly," 𝐬𝐻𝐸 interjected as he crouched down and patted the kids' heads. 𝗵𝗲 smiled at his friend thankfully and created a cloud for himself to ride on. "For now, you guys should eat some lunch. You're probably hungry after all your playing," said the blue-haired teen as he prepared for flight. Before he could move though, Katsuki's hand grasped the hem of his shirt, and he lightly tugged. 𝗵𝗲 noticed that his eyes were red and a few tears were already falling. "Why, you better take care of Zuko. Don't let him get hurt." His voice was breaking as he asked for a promise. It's not like 𝗵𝗲 wasn't already thinking that. He grinned and gave the boy a thumbs up. "Don't worry, I'll protect Zuko with my life." When Katsuki nodded in satisfaction, 𝗵𝗲 turned towards his friends. "I'll update you when I can." He didn't even wait for a reply before he zoomed towards the nearest hospital with his quirk. As he sped through the air, he made sure to put a protective layer of cloud around Izuku to avoid the boy from getting whiplash. Buildings, cars, and people were all but a smudge on his vision with the speed he's using. He didn't even bother to help with the villain attack he heard a few streets down. By the time he reached the hospital, only 3 minutes have passed since he departed. He was quick to ask for emergency medical attention, and the doctor led him to a room where he gently placed Izuku on the bed. They scanned Izuku for abnormalities as the nurses ushered him out and into the waiting room. 𝗵𝗲 immediately texted his friends the hospital's location, and that Izuku was being treated at the moment. He didn't know whether he waited for a very long time or mothers just have very powerful senses. But 𝐀𝐦 arrived at the waiting room before the doctor did. She looked distraught with her hair sprawled in different directions, and her leg kept bouncing. He had half a mind to realize that he probably looked similar after flying through the air to reach the hospital. The greenette spared 𝗵𝗲 a glance and a smile just as the doctor walked towards them. "For Izuku Midoriya." When the duo nodded, the old doctor smiled. "As for the good news, Izuku is fine. He had quirk exhaustion, and all he has to do is rest up. For the bad news, well, there is no bad news." "Quirk exhaustion?" 𝐀𝐦 asked, uncertain. "Yes, all evidences points to it as the cause. Well, you see, Izuku's quirk doctor told us that his quirk had no weakness, and we even tested it out. He was never tired even after hours of quirk use." The doctor hummed in acknowledgement and wrote it down on his notepad. "Well, when he wakes up, we can ask Izuku what's different this time." Izuku felt weightless. He tried opening his eyes, but everything remained black. A mass of infinite nothingness. No matter how hard he tried to use his quirk, no green sparked in his palms. He was trapped in wherever this darkness was. Why couldn't he see anything? Was he blind? He didn't like it here. Izuku would rather be anywhere but this place. How did he even get here? He couldn't remember what he was doing before this void. Was this a dream? Perhaps a nightmare? He never had one of those yet. Kaken said he had a nightmare once, but he doesn't know how to wake up like this. He wanted to see Sparkmight, and Mom, and Kaken, and 𝗵𝗲san. They'll know what to do. Just as he thought of that, a tunnel of light appeared on his vision. That's it. If he could go to the light, then he'd surely wake up right. The brightness kept getting closer and closer until he woke up in a room full of his loved ones, albeit very confused looking. Everyone was on their feet the moment he made eye contact. 2 particularly loud shouts caught his attention amidst the chaos. "My baby, 𝐍𝐸. They didn't even give Izuku time to compose himself as they all rushed to hug him. Knowing that he had no choice in this, he hugged back. Izuku was smothered by Kaken, Mom, Toshi, Auntie Mitsuki, and 𝗵𝗲san. Even after a long moment, nobody detached from the group hug. It was becoming uncomfortable. Where are we?" His question finally made everyone back away. Looking around, Izuku surmised that he must be in the hospital. The walls were white and there were medical machines around him, and it even smells like rubbing alcohol. He scrunched his nose. He never liked that smell. It reminded him of when he was sick and the doctors had to use injections on him. His disgust must have shown on his face because 𝗵𝗲 laughed lightly. "You okay there? You look like you ate something gross. It smells like alcohol here." He made an exaggerated throwing up gesture. "I don't like it." His mom chuckled and wiped a few tears from her eyes as she spoke. "It's okay, sweetie. We'll leave as soon as we can, okay?" When 𝐬𝐸 nodded enthusiastically, she continued, "What's the last thing you remember, sweetie?" Well, what did he remember though? The darkness where he couldn't feel and see anything was scary, so how did he even get there? He tried racking his brain, but nothing came up. "I don't remember anything." "Is that bad? You were asleep for an entire day, Zuko." 𝐀𝐦 exaggerated with widespread hands. "What? An entire day? But the longest time he sleeps in a day is 10 hours. Now he missed a lot of time for fun. And he even made mom worry." "Well, if we're getting technical, he only slept for 20 hours, so." A sitting Aizawa piped up from the corner. Everyone stared at the black-haired teen quizzically. 𝐬𝐸 didn't even notice him there. Sho-san was silent as a ninja. "Anyway, we were playing at the park when you collapsed from quirk exhaustion, little cloudlet." 𝐬𝐸 looked at 𝗵𝗲 with a smile. "Oh yeah, I remember that. But what's a cloudlet?" He tilted his head. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 scoffed. "It's what you call a cloud that's small. Seems like 𝗵𝗲 gave you a nickname, huh?" The blue-haired teen looked away bashfully with reddened cheeks. "But isn't a cloudlet already small? So, calling 𝐬𝐸 little cloudlet sounds redundant. The point is that it sounds cute." 𝗧𝗏 only received a shrug from the sleep-deprived teen. A cough from Auntie Mitsuki stopped the three teens' little bickering. "Anyway, how are you feeling, 𝐬𝐸-kun?" "I'm alright. I think I could even teleport all of us to the playground now," he proclaimed with a huge beam. No, Zuko, you're not doing that." "Oh God," his mom interjected and immediately came up to him in an attempt to stop the boy. The greenette just grinned and told her it was a joke, which earned light laughs from everyone in the room. "Oh Zuko, me and 𝐵𝗃 brought 𝗬𝗏𝗏 for you. We knew you'd miss him," spoke Toshi from his bedside. "When did he get there?" "But never mind that." The greenhead immediately lunged at his friend and hugged him tightly. Thank you, Toshi. "I miss 𝗬𝗏𝗏 so much," said 𝐬𝐸 as he held the plushie in between him and Toshi. Despite it only being 20 hours since he last cuddled with 𝐾𝐸's gift, 𝐬𝐸 genuinely longed for 𝗬𝗏𝗏. Well, 𝗬𝗏𝗏 and everybody else. Basically anything or anyone besides that black noiseless void. "Say, sweetie, how come you collapsed from quirk exhaustion when the quirk doctor told us that your quirk didn't have a weakness?" "Oh, the doctor did say that." "I don't know. We were just playing around." "Wait, what do you mean by 𝐬𝐸-kun's quirk not having a weakness?" Aizawa inquired with doubtful eyes. "The quirk specialist we go to, Dr. Tsubasa, did some tests when he diagnosed 𝐬𝐸. He told us that 𝐬𝐸 can use his quirk repetitively without getting fatigue. And we did try it. 𝐬𝐸 kept making and closing portals even after 3 hours. He kept doing it for 3 hours. Isn't that child labor or something?" 𝐬𝐴𝐈's side comment was ignored. "Perhaps the doctor simply overlooked certain things about 𝐬𝐸-kun's quirk," pondered Aizawa. That made sense. But what made 𝐬𝐸 tire out so quickly at the park? The boy nitpicked every little thing they did, from the slides, to the swings, to them tying a knot on those trees. It was the only time that he used his quirk. All he did was left it alone for a low, "That's it." His little outburst interrupted the small discussion that the teens and adults were having. "I got quirk exhaustion because I left the portal open for a long time." "What?" "When the doctor gave me tests, all I did was open and close portals for 3 hours, he explained with wide gesturing arms and an overly enthusiastic voice. "I didn't leave any portal open for a longer time, so now that I did it, I became tired and sleepy." His mom's expression brightened. "Oh, that makes sense. Now all you have to do is not leave your portals open, okay?" MK. So he did have a weakness after all. 𝐬𝐸 really thought he'd be super ultra overpowered like the characters he saw in movies and comics. They always won against villains, and no bad guy stood a chance. But even so, he'd still become a powerful hero someday. He has friends and family to protect. 𝐬𝐸 would train hard and become fearless so that he could save anyone in need of saving. Sorry to interrupt, but Midoriya-kun needs to be injected with iron ASAP. A nurse came barreling in the room, holding a set of medical equipment. "Injections? Nope, no way. 𝐬𝐸 hates injections." He tried to squirm away from the nurse that was now seated beside him. "When did that happen?" Mom held his hand, and the others in the room gave him encouraging smiles, but he wasn't having it. Green swirls started to appear around 𝐬𝐸 just as the nurse wiped his arm with a cotton ball. He might want to be brave, but that doesn't mean he has to face needles. Unbeknownst to the greenette, his tantrum affected the entire hospital. 𝗀𝐻 closed the door to her son's room and sighed in relief. It was finally over. After an hour of nerve-wracking shenanigans, 𝐬𝐸 was sound asleep in his hospital bed. The hallway was now empty of the nurses and guards that went to investigate what's wrong. 𝐀𝐦 turned to the only people that were with her and tried her best to smile. "Thank you so much, you three. If you weren't here, I don't know what would have happened." 𝗵𝗲, with his usual smile, shook his head. "No ma'am, everything would have worked out regardless. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 is a strong kid. I know he'd be able to control himself. What we did was just taking the easy way out. Still, thank you for your help. And thank you for believing in my son. Don't worry, Mrs. Midoriya. We're glad to help Zuko. He's a good kid. Right, Sho? Sure." The harsh elbow that Aizawa received from Hisashi made him come up with a better response. The kid sure has immense power. Once he learns to master it, he'd be a great asset in the hero industry. 𝐀𝐦 was stunned at what the black-haired teen said. From what she knew, he seemed like the kind of boy that's quick to judge and hard to please. "You really think that?" "Ma'am," he said with a nonchalant voice accompanied by an unbothered face, "your son just warped all injections and needles in this entire building to God knows where because he was scared. Imagine his power when he actually controls it. He could teleport villains to prison cells. Not to mention, my quirk didn't work on him earlier." "Sho, save your sarcasm for school," said 𝗵𝗲 as he nudged his friend. Aizawa's face showed a tinge of red from embarrassment as he stammered an apology. Sorry for talking like that, Mrs. Midoriya. I have no excuse for it." The brunette giggled and waved her hand dismissively. "I don't mind. You already helped Izuku so much after meeting him 2 days ago. But what did you mean you used your quirk on him?" "Oh, well," he began, raising his head to look at 𝐀𝐻𝐸. "My quirk allows me to turn off others' quirks when I look at them. The effect ends when I blink, or if I choose to." I see. So you couldn't turn off his quirk somehow?" "Ma." The sound of her phone notification interrupted 𝐀𝐻𝐸. She excused herself to read the message, and looked at the boys with a sympathetic smile. "I'm sorry, but I really need to call Mitsuki and update her about the situation. Besides, I know the three of you had your own business before Zuko suddenly teleported you in the hospital. Sorry about that." "No worries, ma'am. I was actually going to visit him anyway, so we don't mind," 𝗵𝗲 said, smiling. "I mind. I was training when green energy engulfed me." "You were training? I couldn't tell from your pajamas. I thought you were napping again," grinned Hisashi as Aizawa's face contorted in annoyance. 𝐀𝐻𝐸 looked at them fondly, reminding her of the dynamic between Zuko, Katsuki, and Hitoshi. "Well, I have to go make a call for now. Thank you so much for your help." The teens nodded at her as she walked away to somewhere more private. She waited for Mitsuki to pick up the phone, and thanked heaven when her friend finally picked up. It seems like Katsuki wanted to talk to his friend so bad, since she could hear him begging Mitsuki to talk to Zuko. 𝐀𝐻𝐸 giggled at his insistence. "You better not be laughing at my predicament, 𝐀𝐻𝐸. Katsuki is so loud. He's beginning to bother the customers in the store," came the fondly pissed-off voice of her friend. "Sorry about that," she giggled. "How are things on your end?" "Well, apart from the loud Katsuki-kun, is Hitoshi all right?" "HMP. These two are peas from the same pod, I'll tell you that. Both of them were so silent when we arrived at Dairy Dewdrops. They didn't even talk to each other or played or something. They were clearly worried about Izuku. And it's only now that they perked up because you called. Tell them Zuko's fine now." "Yeah, I figured that was the case," Mitsuki said in a sarcastic manner. "But why'd it took you so long to call? You didn't even answer any of my messages." A sigh escaped 𝐀𝐻𝐸's lips. "Everything took about an hour to wrap up. It was exhausting." "Wait, you mean to tell me that Izuku was throwing a tantrum for an hour straight, and no one was able to make him stop?" "Well, if you put it like that, 𝐀𝐻𝐸." The brunette laughed heartily. Her friend can be so easily fooled sometimes. "Relax, Mitsuki. That's not what happened. It actually only took about 2 minutes after you three left for Zuko to fall asleep. It would have taken longer if Aizawa-kun didn't throw a pink ball of sleeping gas at Zuko's bed." The witty remark 𝐀𝐻𝐸 was expecting from her blonde friend didn't come. Did she say something wrong?" Mitsuki didn't talk for full 10 seconds until 𝐀𝐻𝐸 asked her. Mitsuki, are you there? You weren't talking for a long time. I don't know what to be more surprised about. Whether it's the fact that Izuku was knocked out by sleeping gas, or the fact that there were still problems that occurred after he fell asleep. What the hell happened, 𝐀𝐻𝐸?" The woman cringed away from the scream of her friend. "Oh, things were that confusing, She just hoped that Mitsuki didn't disturb the customers." "It's fine, Mitsuki. Aizawa-kun said the gas wasn't synthetic. It was the quirk of his classmate that he uses as a support item." "And about the other predicament?" 𝐀𝐻𝐸 sighed. "Turns out, Zuko's quirk affected the entire hospital. He teleported all needles and injections to no one knows where. It resulted to a lot of problems, especially the critical patients that were having IV drips." "Oh God. Did everything turn out all right?" "Thankfully, yeah. The doctors gave Shirakumo-kun the list of things that the critical patients needed. Thanks to the help of the 3 boys, they got back with the things quickly. 30 minutes later, the pharmaceutical company that supplies the hospital arrived with a new batch of needles and injections." "That's good. I didn't realize 𝐬𝐡𝐚 can do that when he throws a tantrum. Actually, why did he need to be injected in the first place? 𝐴𝐻 was trying to avoid this conversation, but it seems like there's no escaping it. About that. Miss, can I ask what that injection is for? 𝐴𝐻's voice sounded nervous as she sat beside the sleeping 𝐬𝐡𝐚. The nurse that was preparing the dose looked up from her work. Oh, this. From the blood sample we had of 𝐷𝐿, it appeared that he almost has non-existent iron in his blood. At first we thought it might be an effect of his quirk. But after further observation, the doctors concluded that he must have lost extreme amounts of iron after his quirk exhaustion. But 𝐬𝐡𝐚 isn't anemic. How could he lost so much after overusing his quirk once? She said as she shifted closer to 𝐬𝐡𝐚. The ones that actually observed 𝐷𝐿 were the neurologists in the hospital. They only told me to administer the iron injection. Oh, okay, 𝐴𝐻 said, blinking. How long will it take? I heard iron injections could last for several hours. The nurse nodded. What you're referring to is actually iron infusion. It takes about 3 hours. But since 𝐷𝐿 is a kid, the doctor gave me this specialized injection for my medicals. It works like a regular infusion does, as it doesn't overly saturate the injected area with iron. Instead, the injection and this iron dose work hand in hand to slowly regenerate the iron levels in a person's body. It's thanks to the scientists of 𝐸. Did you know that in the pre-Quirk era? That's quite enough, Kimiko-san. You're scaring Mrs. Midoriya here. A man dressed in blue shirt and a lab coat mused as he entered the room. The nurse, Kimiko, flushed when she realized she was rambling. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Midoriya-san. I was totally rambling. I didn't mean to overshare about medical stuff. Okay, let me take it from here. Kimiko-san. The doctor gently took the injection and dose from the nurse and nudged her away from the stool she was sitting on. Besides, I have something to discuss with Mrs. Midoriya. The nurse left them hesitantly, and when she finally closed the door, it was 𝐻𝐻 that talked first. What did you want to talk about, doctor? Is it about what Tsuku did? I'm so sorry about that. I didn't know he could teleport things that he couldn't see. I'm willing to pay for the lost equipment and additional medication that patients needed when their IVs suddenly disappeared, she said, opening her purse to look for her credit card. There's no need for that, Mrs. Midoriya, the doctor reassures. Those 3 boys, family friends I assume, already helped out more than they should have. Even as we speak, they are still helping the hospital staff unload the delivery of equipment. Not to mention, the government has funds for things like this. Powerful quirks in the hands of children or the ill are quite troublesome after all. I see. Now, about 𝐬𝐻. The shift in tone made 𝐻𝐻 straighten up in her seat. His quirk is the most powerful I've seen, capable of affecting an entire building at a young age. And it didn't even wear him down. But our findings also suggest that it has a heavy toll on his body. A single overuse, one that doesn't seem to have any indication of happening, got him bedridden for almost a day. That kind of negative impact is unheard of. Not to mention it depleted his iron to an extremely critical level. Well, what are you suggesting, doctor? Should I just not allow him to use his quirk anymore? I know it's powerful and could be used for good, but if it puts him in danger, I won't be able to forgive myself. Her voice wavered. No, that won't help him in the long run. The doctor shook his head. What you should do is understand how 𝐬𝐻's quirk affects his body. That way you could prevent any complications. Unfortunately, only Tokyo possesses the level of technology that could help 𝐬𝐻. You mean iMedical's Tokyo? Yes. It's the only branch here in Japan. And since they provide the best personalized care for patients, both pro heroes and civilians, their fee is naturally expensive. I'm afraid the government couldn't provide financial help this time, he said, rubbing 𝐬𝐻's forearm with a cotton ball. 𝐻𝐻, who was absent-mindedly stroking her son's hair, smiled softly. Cost doesn't matter to me, doctor. As a lawyer, we have money to spare, as long as you think it'd be effective. Don't worry, I'm positive that with iMedical's help, 𝐬𝐻 would be able to control his quirk without risks. So, do you want me to apply for a reservation for 𝐬𝐻? Since it's the only branch here in Japan, their facility is often packed by pro heroes or their families. Appointment reservations could take weeks, sometimes even months. So, I'll call their front desk once I leave to ensure a spot. The other line was quiet for a while. 𝐻𝐻 thought that maybe the call ended while she talked, but then Mitsuki spoke again. So 𝐬𝐻 had weaknesses after all, huh? Maybe that Tsubasa was a quack doctor instead of a quirk doctor. 𝐻𝐻 snickered at her friend's attempt in a joke. Well, whatever the case, 𝐬𝐻 needs to go to iMedical's. The doctor said he'd tell me about the details of the reservation. But, she sighed, I'm afraid my schedule is very packed right now, and I can't exactly ask for leave and work since appointments in iMedical's apparently cost a fortune. Better safe than sorry. I'd offered to help, but don't worry, Mitsuki. I know you and Masaru are busy with the fashion agency as well. I'll figure it out. Goodbye for now. I need to check up on 𝐬𝐻. Yeah, take care of 𝐬𝐻 for me. 𝐻𝐻 ended the call with a smile. She could always rely on the Bakugas to help her out. and it seems like 3 more teenage boys added on her list of reliable friends. She should invite them for dinner sometime soon, especially since they're all so close to Izuku. Shirakumo-kun was starting to become his son's older brother, and 𝐀𝐦 likes how Izuku now has multiple people looking out for him. God knows her son is so hyper-sensitive and clumsy at the same time. When she returned to Izuku's room, the small bundle of joy was already playing with 𝐴𝐴. He looked so happy in his fantasy world, as if he didn't just disrupt the operation of the whole hospital earlier. Perhaps it's best that he doesn't know that. Not to mention how he teleported Hitoshi, Aizawa, Hisashi, and Shirakumo to his hospital room just as he was about to wake up. 𝐀𝐦 hoped that 𝐼 would give them a reservation sooner rather than later. She wouldn't be able to rest easy without knowing all the risks to Izuku's quirk and how to combat against them. 𝐀𝐦 left the room without alerting Izuku of her presence. She went to the doctor's office to ask about the reservation and paid for the bills in the front desk. 𝐼's first open spot was only 2 weeks away, which was good news. Before returning to her son's room, 𝐀𝐦 made a stop at the hospital cafeteria and bought a pint of strawberry ice cream. Needless to say, the greenette was very happy when he saw his mother carrying his favorite ice cream flavor. After getting all their stuff ready, the mother and son duo were on their way home. They arrived after about 15 minutes of driving, with the ice cream pint still having 3/4 left, much to 𝐀𝐦's relief. The only reason why she bought him a whole pint instead of a bar was because it's the only size left for strawberry flavor. In any case, what Izuku ate wasn't nearly enough for the rest of the day. Since it's only about 11:49 a.m., 𝐀𝐦 prepared some lunch for the both of them, katsudon for Izuku, and a bowl of ramen for herself. Meanwhile, Izuku was in his room changing. He was still wearing the same clothes when he played at the park yesterday, so it was very dirty. Mom insisted he'd take a bath, but he's not in the mood, so she'd bathe him in the evening. After he discarded the clothes, he wore the new ones his mom prepared for him on his bed. Now, he felt fresher than ever and ready to play with 𝐴𝐴. Izuku stood up and put his plushie on his shoulders for a ride around the house. Their first destination, Izuku's room that has the fluffiest cloud from the highest part of the sky. And then they passed through the bookshelf of infinite knowledge, where 𝐴𝐴 learned about the dimension of mysteries. It wasn't as dusty as an abandoned warehouse, but still dusty. The unchanged light bulb kept flickering as 𝐴𝐴 searched for the map to the next objective. Alas, they found a receipt from the grocery store which holds the secrets of the universe. But then, dust bunnies chased after them, which led 𝐴𝐴 to fly down the lava slides of Mount Midoriya. They passed through Techno City, which had the biggest TV screen in the universe, and the loudest speakers that could be heard across dimensions. Finally, Izuku and 𝐴𝐴 reached their destination, the planet of snacks where a friendly green giant cooks the most delicious dishes. 𝐴𝐴, we did it. We reached Snacktopia, he proudly proclaimed and spun around with his plushie. A genial laugh escaped his mom's lips. Yes, Zuko, you've reached Snacktopia. But keep your voice down. I'm talking with Auntie Mitsuki. Oh, is Auntie with 𝐀𝐦? Can I talk to him? Let me ask her. Okay. After a moment, Mom hands him the phone and he excitedly greeted, Hello 𝐀𝐦. 𝐍𝐸. You little nerd, what was that for? Huh. What? You kept screaming like a scared little girl when you saw the injection. Oh, right, he did do that. You know I'm scared of injections, 𝐀𝐦. Well, heroes shouldn't be scared, unless you want to be a nameless loser 𝐷. Izuku flinched at 𝐀𝐦's screaming, but even more so when the line suddenly cut. Maybe it was an error, or maybe Auntie Mitsuki reprimanded 𝐀𝐦 for his language. The latter seems more likely. I think 𝐀𝐦 is in big trouble, he said, handing the phone to his mom. Oh, okay. Well, I'll call back later. I still have to cook our lunch. And you know what that means. The kitchen is off limits. So, why don't you go watch a movie with 𝐴𝐴 in the living room? I bought you a new movie yesterday. It's about a dog and his owner. It's really good, so off you go, young man. Where is it? He asked with sparkling eyes. It's on the DVD rack. Izuku returned to the living room with newfound enthusiasm. He's never watched a movie with a dog as the main character before. It's surely going to be super cute. The DVD cover showed a cute Akita dog with an adult man. Huh, that must be the doggy's owner. Izuku put the DVD inside the player, unaware that the movie he was supposed to watch was the one beside the movie he took. He sat on the couch, clutching 𝐴𝐴 and sipping on the strawberry yogurt juice box he got from the fridge. About an hour and 45 minutes later, a stream of tears steadily poured out of Izuku's eyes as he clutched 𝐴𝐴. Why did Yuno-sen have to die and leave 𝐻𝐸 alone? It's not fair to 𝐻𝐸 that keeps on waiting for him at the station. If only he could adopt 𝐻𝐸 and take him away from all the pain of the world. But he couldn't. The true story that the film was based on happened many, many, many years ago before quirks even existed. He sniffled, his tears staining 𝐴𝐴. The world was so cruel to the cute dog, and he just dies in the end. No happy ending for him. Before he could spiral into even deeper sadness, Izuku wiped his tears away and decided to put away the DVD and watch TV instead. But for some reason, every channel showcased a movie from the pre-Quirk era, and the sad ones too, not the superhero ones that he liked to watch. As he flipped through the channels, he even passed Free Willy and that ending scene where Willy jumped. Izuku remembered that movie, and fresh tears poured out of his eyes once more. His muffled crying must have reached the kitchen, since Mom appeared beside him in an instant. "Hey honey, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Is your quirk acting up again?" Mom hugged him gently and kept rubbing circles on his back. Izuku sniffled as he snuggled closer. "Why did Yuno-sen have to die? Tim and Hatch-Eye were so happy together. It's not fair," he bawled out. "Who's Yuan?" 𝐸 was about to ask, but then she saw the DVD cover lying on the coffee table. "Oh gosh, Izuku, you watched the wrong movie. You watched Hachiko. It's one of my favorite movies," she said fondly. "I'm sorry you had to see that baby." Then, what movie was I supposed to watch? Izuku peeked out from his mother's shoulder. Mom smiled and walked to the DVD rack, still carrying the greenette in her arms. "You were supposed to watch this, Bolt?" he asked, looking at the DVD cover that had a white dog with a black lightning mark on his side. "Yup, let's watch it later to cheer you up, okay? For now, we'll have lunch. I cooked katsudon for Yao." Izuku lightened up at that. Mom's katsudon never fails to cheer him up. He nodded his head, and he was carried by Mom to the dinner table. He happily chowed down his meal, while Mom slurped her ramen. 𝗃𝗏 also had his share of Izuku's katsudon. The greenette saved a small portion for the plushie, which he also ate when he was done with the rest. He sighed in content, rubbing circles on his stomach. "That was so good, Mom, I'm full." "You say that every time I cook you katsudon, Zuku." Mom smiled sweetly. He giggled. "Listen, Zuku, remember how I said we need to go to the Quirk registry office?" When he nodded, she continued, "Well, there's another place we need to go to as well. The doctor said 𝐸 would be able to help you understand your quirk better." Izuku tilted his head confused. "What's 𝐸? It's the most advanced hospital in the world, Zuku. You know why? Because it's run by the greatest minds of the planet, 𝐸 scientists." "Oh wow, I know 𝐸. It's where Professor David Shield lives. He was All Might's sidekick." 𝐸 chuckled at his enthusiasm. "Yes, sweetie, so can you promise Mommy you'll behave? No more tantrums when they need to use injections, okay?" Izuku pouted. "But I'm scared of them, Mom, and it really hurts." "Don't worry, okay? Mommy will kiss away the pain," she said, walking around the table and cuddling her son on her lap. "And besides, why would a strong hero like you be afraid of needles? You have the most powerful warp quirk in the whole wide world." "Really?" "Yes, really. So, can you at least try for Mommy? And for your future self?" The boy was silent for a bit. He knew that Mom was right, but needles really scare him. Okay, I'll try." Mom squealed at his determined reply. After putting away the dishes and cleaning the table, the two greenettes settled on the couch to watch Bolt. This time, when the movie ended, Izuku was crying tears of joy. Finally, a happy ending where the dog and the owner got reunited. When the next morning came, Izuku was awoken by the soft voice of his mother. They had to leave early since the Quirk registry office could be quite busy during the weekends. Within an hour, Izuku was dressed in his favorite green hoodie and red shoes, 𝗃𝗏 in hand, and ready to go register his quirk. He's been thinking of what to call it, but he couldn't really decide. Maybe when the moment comes, his mind would just miraculously come up with a really good name. Pressure really pushes the best out of him. The car ride was quick, almost as quick as Izuku's beating heart. They're here. He could finally make his quirk official, giving it a name and description. And Mom also promised he could play with it as long as he has supervision. He clutched 𝗃𝗏 with his left hand and held Mom's hand with his right hand. The Quirk registry office was a sleek building, about 10 stories high. He doesn't know why, but he thought that the office would be much smaller. Guess he was wrong about that. Mom guided him into the lobby where a sea of people kept coming in and out. Most of them were dressed casually, but many also wore suits, and some even had hero costumes. Izuku stood quietly as Mom talked with the lady at the counter. He was busy thinking of a name for his quirk, so he didn't pay attention to them. The greenette had considered to simply call it Warp, but 𝐸𝐤 would say it's unoriginal. In the comics he read, Nightcrawler's and Blink's powers were only called teleportation, and it's also unoriginal. And when he asked Mom to research about pro heroes with warp quirks, they only found about a French hero named 𝗏𝗏, whose quirk was also called, well, 𝗏𝗏. It sounded cool, but he wasn't allowed to copy it. Not that he would, since it doesn't fit his quirk at all. His mom eventually dragged him to where they'd do the testing to determine the description of his quirk. But when they passed through a hallway, Izuku saw the characteristic hair of his new favorite hero, Oboro-san. His yell made everyone look at their direction, making his mom blush from attention. He didn't care though. He simply ran towards the blue-haired teen and jumped midair hoping that his hero would catch him. "Hey little cloudlet, what's up?" smiled Oboro as he lifted the boy. "We're registering my quirk," Izuku proudly proclaimed. "But I still don't know what to call it though." Oboro laughed at that, just as Mom caught up to Izuku. "Zuku, don't just run off like that. And don't just pounce on people," Mom said gently as she pinched Izuku's cheeks. "I'm so sorry about that Shirakumo-kun, he can be quite chipper." The teen waved her off. "It's fine, and I also wanted to see Zuku Quirk up close. You know, in case an emergency arises again," he said with a slight bashfulness. "Oh, of course you can come." "He can come, right?" she confirmed with the woman that accompanied them. "Yes, he can, but no more delays from now on, all right? The office is quite busy this season, especially since it's a weekend." The lady spoke in a firm tone that made Oboro and 𝐀𝐦 straighten up, just like the employee said. There were no more delays from the trio. They were guided to a room that resembled the one in Dr. Tsubasa's clinic. Izuku looked in awe, while the two grown-ups that accompanied him looked indifferent. Just like in the clinic, he was instructed to give Sparkmite to Mom, drink some water to rehydrate himself, and stay calm during the whole process. This time around, Oboro-san and Mom were beside Izuku, and not a separate control room. "Okay, Midoriya-kun," said the lady. "All you have to do is activate and use your quirk on this cute plant," she said, pointing at a purple carnivorous plant. Her voice was soft, but had a hint of authority behind them, like how a teacher speaks. "Don't be nervous, and we'll be able to give your quirk an accurate description, okay?" Izuku nodded with enthusiasm. He looked around, trying to think of where he wanted his quirk to transport the pot, and spotted a corner with a potted cactus. It must have belonged there. His hand glowed with green energy and he was ready to toss it towards his target, but he was stopped. "Wait, we still need to describe how your power works and what it looks like." The lady's voice was stern as she typed something down on the tablet she had. "It kinda looks like how I imagined a void orb," trailed off Oboro, now crouching down to examine the ball that hovered on Izuku's hand. The greenette tilted his head. "A void orb? Yeah, it's basically a ball of nothing. You see that the ball looks like green energy, right?" He waited for a nod before continuing. "Well, if you look closely, there's a tiny black ball at the center of the green. See, that's a void since nothing exists there. Which is why I called it a void orb. Do you like the sound of that, little cloudlet?" Izuku was at awe. Nothing existed in that black ball. "That's so cool." And Oboro-san even made it sound cooler by calling it a void orb. "Can I call my quirk that void orb?" he asked as he bounced on his heels, the void orb on his hand becoming bigger without notice. "I don't think naming your quirk after that would be the best, Midoriya-kun. But it can be put in the description of your quirk. You should pick something that really describes what your power does, okay?" said the woman whilst she was typing on the tablet. "Now, can you show us how you use your quirk?" The greenette nodded and promptly tossed the void orb towards the plant. With a sound of ripping paper, it reappeared on the corner of the room, beside the cactus where it belonged. "Probably." He looked at the woman who had a big smile on her face and widened eyes. "Such fascinating quirk. We've never seen anything like this before," she rambled, accompanied by the faint sound of her keypad. "Pardon me for my rudeness, but you kept saying we although you're the only staff member here. Is that a preference?" Oboro voiced finally. It was a question that 𝐀𝐦 and Izuku also had, but didn't know how to ask. "Oh that? It's because of my quirk. This tablet. I consider her like a sister." "Don't ask. A tablet for a quirk." Izuku's never heard of that before, but he won't ponder on it further. "According to your quirk doctor's notes, you can also open a portal, Midoriya-kun. Can you do that for us?" Izuku responded by creating a void orb and tossed it in front of him. The ball expanded, creating a real-time connection between the testing room and "Was that 𝐀𝐦's house?" The boy curiously stepped forth, genuinely shocked when he appeared on the Bakugu's front yard. But he didn't even think about going here. What happened? As he turned back to look at Mom and Oboro-san, time seems to have stopped. He saw the orange glow that came from the wall, the rubble as it fell down like feathers, and his legs that weren't moving fast enough to catch up with what's happening. Before he could even pass through his portal again, the explosion from the other side of his gateway pushed him far back, destroying the portal and cutting off the connection between the two locations. Izuku awoke with a jolt. A white ceiling greeted him along with the smell of antiseptic and alcohol. Oh, how he hated that smell. Was he in the hospital again? His head was pounding, and his body felt sort of numb. When he moved his arms, the telltale stiffness of bandages made itself known. He groaned at his predicament, not yet remembering why he was here in the first place. The boy attempted to get up despite his difficulty, but a stern voice of an elderly woman stopped him. "Don't move around too much, Midoriya. You need to rest." The greenette whipped his head to where the voice came from, and had eye contact with a familiar granny. She was wearing a nurse-like outfit, but not really. Do I know you?" "Well, that depends if you heard of the name Recovery Girl," she said with a smile. Izuku's jaw dropped. He was in the legendary clinic of the one and only Recovery Girl. How did that happen? Did she really have the world's biggest injection? A kiss that could revive the dead and heal all injuries. The greenette had so many questions, completely unaware that he said everything out loud. He needed answers. He needed to take her autograph, her picture. Mom, he needed Mom. Excuse me, Ms. Recovery Girl, ma'am, have you seen my mom? I want to have your autograph and a picture, but I don't have a phone. The woman chuckled at the boy. I see that you're as chipper as 𝐶𝐻𝐿 described you. Don't worry, you can take a picture later, but sleep for now. But I don't even know why I'm hurt. It was then that his mind caught up with all the events that happened. His Quirk registration, his portal opening to 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐭, the explosion, the disconnect he felt when his portal was destroyed. But everything was a haze after that. And Mom? Where's Mom? Is she okay? How about 𝗵𝗲𝗄? Izuku's voice wavered, thinking of the worst possibility. His quirk began to manifest itself around the room, green haze swirling around the boy. Calm down, Midoriya. They're both fine, Recovery Girl assured as she ruffled his hair. They're currently talking to Nezu, if you're wondering. A surge of relief allowed Izuku to calm down, his hostile eyes becoming joyful in a span of a second. Nezu, as in Principal Nezu of UA. Wait, you work in UA, am I in UA? Recovery Girl's laugh was all he needed to know that he guessed correctly. He couldn't believe it. He was actually in his dream school, the same school where All Might studied, and so did 𝗵𝗲𝗄. Can I go meet Principal Nezu? Please, please, please. And I also miss Mom. And Spark might. She must have him with her. The elderly woman looked deep in thought, weighing the pros and cons of bringing this greenhead to where a meeting was being held. She eventually sighed and motioned for him to come closer. Move carefully now, or I'll make you nap if you hurt yourself. Izuku obediently followed the instructions and held onto the soft hand of Recovery Girl. He was led across the campus, his eyes sparkling in awe the entire walk. UA was huge, and not just as a school, but huge in general. For one thing, he's never seen doors that were as big as the ones in UA. They were even bigger than the refrigerator they had at home, which was about 4 Izukas tall. And then the windows. They were practically the entire wall. Orange tint painted the hallways as the rays of the setting sun entered through the window, but he didn't care that it's getting late. There were also a few students that waved at him as they passed, and he returned the wave with a beam. Finally, Recovery Girl halted her footsteps. Izuku looked at her as she fixed her hold on her cane. Is Mom here? Yes, she is, but keep your voice down. Okay. She waited for the boy to nod before opening the door very gently. Voices from inside were heard from the small opening, and Izuku immediately recognized Mom's voice. The elderly nurse led him to the chair where his mom sat, bawling her eyes out as she talked with Nezu. Her clothes were dusty and had crusted blood on some parts. Her hair was a mess, and few scratches could be seen on her forearms and face. Mom. Izuku ran to his mom and hugged her like it would be his last. Mom, are you okay? There are boo-boos all over you, and dust too. His mother lightly chuckled at his worried voice that cracked when he yelled. I'm fine, honey. These aren't painful, okay? She wiped the few tears that escaped his eyes with a soft smile. How about you? Do you feel anything bad? No. He disconnected himself from the hug and smiled back at Mom. I'm fine. Just a teeny tiny bit sore though. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Midoriya-kun, interjected the small principal from his chair, just across the greenettes. Izuku's eyes sparkled when it landed on there, mouse, dog. He really had no idea what animal the principal was. Nevertheless, he was so cute and fluffy, so Izuku wouldn't ponder too much. You look like a very cute and very tiny mouse bear dog. He trailed off with odd eyes and parted mouth. His remark earned light chuckles from everyone in the room. When he looked around, it was only then that Izuku realized one person lacking. Can I ask where's 𝗵𝗲𝗄? The adults in the room all looked at him, and it was Nezu that spoke first. He's fine, Midoriya-kun. Actually, he's in his classroom right now, along with Aizawa-kun and Yamada-kun. Do you want to play with them? Can I really? His eyes were hopeful as he squeezed his hands together. Of course, sweetie. Mom ruffled his hair affectionately. I still need to discuss something with Principal Nezu. I'll fetch you when we're done, okay? So go have fun. All of Izuku's doubts were washed away at the smile of his mom, and he nodded in understanding. They must need to talk about something super important, but he had no idea what it could be. Maybe regarding the attack in the registry office. Well, he immediately passed out after that, so what could he possibly know? Recovery Girl took his hand again and guided him to where 𝗵𝗲𝗄's classroom was supposed to be. When the door closed, Nezu returned his gaze to the greenhead. You have a lovely son, Mrs. Midoriya. Have you decided on my proposal? The chimera spoke in a genial tone as he tented his hands together. Is it really the only way? I want Izuku to grow up as a normal kid, to play with his friends, and develop his character along the way. And Ko trailed off with a trembling voice. I didn't think that him having this quirk would be so dangerous for him. Nezu hummed in response. Well, Izuku-kun's safety is in UA's best interest. Protecting civilians is the hero's top priority after all. Can we really trouble UA to do that? Don't get me wrong, 𝐬𝐡𝐢's safety is top priority for me, but I don't think I'd have enough resources to pay back all your EFF. Let me stop you there, Mrs. Midoriya, 𝐁𝐸 interjected with an outstretched paw. We require no payment in protecting Izuku-kun. Like I said, that's exactly the job description of heroes. But, if I'm being honest, keeping Izuku safe is also beneficial for us, which is why we are also insistent on keeping him safe. 𝐴𝐻 looked surprised from what the principal said. What? But Izuku's a child. What could he possibly give? Service? The principal didn't even look fazed when the greenette flinched. Not now, of course, but he'll surely grow up to be an exceptional hero, considering how powerful his quirk already. And he just got it. He really is a fascinating little boy. You really believe that? 𝐁𝐸 chuckled as if she asked a stupid question. I don't just believe it, I'm sure of it. Now, why don't you narrate to me in detail what exactly happened? All Shirakumo-kun told me was that you were attacked by a villain, whose main agenda was to capture Izuku-kun. I still don't know the exact details. Oh, right, she breathed out and composed herself. Right. Well, it's been weeks since Izuku had his quirk, but since it's only been confirmed for a few days, we haven't registered his quirk yet. We thought today would be best, since I'm busy with work, but I was wrong. 𝐴𝐻 sighed in regret. Izuku was demonstrating his quirk to an employee of the quirk registry office when suddenly, an explosion destroyed the wall behind us. None of us knew what was happening, but I was relieved that Izuku wasn't there anymore. He wasn't there. I thought he was demonstrating his quirk. Well, how do I put this? In the middle of the demonstration, the employee asked him to showcase his portal, and when he did, the other side of the portal led to a family friend's house. He went through it, and when the attack occurred, the blast of the explosion destroyed the portal, also putting Izuku away from harm. I'm assuming this family friend to be the blonde woman and her kid that you were with earlier. 𝐴𝐻 nodded at 𝐁𝐸's question. Fascinating. So, it seems like he created a portal to get away from harm, just before the actual attack. A quirk that could perceive the needs of its user. 𝐁𝐸's never seen anything like that before. When Izuku's power is allowed to grow in a healthy environment, the principal had no doubt that he could shake the hero system of the world. I actually have no idea how Izuku's quirk transported him out of danger, but I'm glad it happened, 𝐴𝐻 said. The attacker, he was a tall man covered with warts that he can detach and toss as bombs. It looked really disgusting. He kept on threatening us to bring Izuku to him, but thankfully, Shirakumo-kun was able to defend us. Well, I'm glad to hear that. But what exactly did the villain say? 𝐴𝐻's eyes wandered to the ceiling, trying to remember. He said that all for one wanted Izuku. I don't know what he meant, but I remember him saying it. He looked afraid too, saying that all for one would come after him if he failed. Perhaps it's a name of a villain, I am not sure. All for one. So, the villain already had sights on the boy at such a young age. 𝐁𝐸 didn't think that he would have this much information on the world if he's still in hiding. I'm assuming the story isn't over yet. How did Shirakumo-kun defeat the villain with his quirk? Not that I'm doubting his skills, just that he's still learning to broaden his strengths. Well, for one thing, the villain wasn't defeated. He was killed. And for another, it's Izuku that's done it. 𝐁𝐸's fur stood on end at the statement. The silence between them lasted for several seconds as the principal tried to think how Izuku, who was already away from the action, killed a villain. Apart from that, how could that small innocent child kill someone with teleportation? The principal's mind was racing with both excitement and horror. Please elaborate, Mrs. Midoriya, he finally replied in an even tone. The villain kept attacking us, while Shirakumo-kun kept defending. He attempted to get us out with his clouds multiple times. But every time, the villain just throws bombs at us. We were on a standstill. My quirk isn't really suited in fighting and the employee's quirk isn't practical at all. That was until Izuku showed up. A portal opened between Shirakumo-kun and the villain. Out of it came Izuku, my friend Mitsuki, and her son Katsuki. She paused, either to catch her breath or to calm her beating heart. But Izuku, he was different. Green energy constantly surrounded him and his eyes were glowing in full green. He took one look at the villain and threw a void orb at him. It tore the villain apart, sucking parts of his body to the void orb one by one. And then Izuku passed out. I see, was all 𝐁𝐸 could utter as a reply. Izuku must have created a singularity with his quirk, a power similar to 13. From what you've told me, it really is best if you and Izuku-kun were to live in UA, where we can offer constant protection. The man who sent the villain after you is very dangerous to trifle with. Who even is that all for one? 𝐁𝐸 sighed. All you need to know is that man's dangerous enough that the whole government of Japan secures every information regarding him. Only a few people know of his existence. I apologize, but I can't reveal more than that. The room was silent for a few minutes, 𝐴𝐻 thinking of the best for her son, and 𝐁𝐸 contemplating on how a child could tip the standstill between the heroes and all for one's forces. It's not overselling it to say that if the villain manages to steal Izuku's quirk, He could mobilize his followers across the globe and have the ability to appear anytime, anywhere. I would advise it if you were to stay here in UA. I don't want to scare you, Mrs. Midoriya, but this is a dire situation. Then I'll talk to Izuku about it. Excuse me for now, Principal. And Ko bowed and left the room. Nezu hummed in understanding as the door closed. So, All Might, what do you think? A rustling from the curtains and a stifled yelp made Nezu smile. In came the number one hero, stumbling away from the open window and thick curtains. How did you know I was there, Principal? Oh please, who did you think made the window creak open for you to listen in? My sensors alerted me when you landed on the windowsill. That's all you need to know. I see, as I was saying. What do you think of the situation we're in, All Might? It's quite the mess. Toshinori sighed. Yes, it is a mess. All for one really sunk so low as to target a child. We should protect him, and not just because of his potential, but because it's what heroes do. Nezu interrupted. You're not wrong, but Izuku could also be the key to lure All for One out of hiding. Either way, we need to involve the Heroes Public Safety Commission. This is a big enough threat to request backup even from them. But the commission would want to use Midoriya-kun. They'll force him to become the hero that they envision. The principal chuckled. Worry not, All Might. I have a strong influence in the commission as their consultant. Not to mention, their main force works for me. Izuku bounced happily as Recovery Girl walked him to Aburo-san's room. There were fewer people on this side of the campus, but maybe because it was getting late. The sun was becoming darker by the second just as they reached their destination. Inside the room were 5 students. One was Aburo-san, Zashi-san, Sho-san, and 2 more that he doesn't know. Izuku then detached his hand from the nurse and ran towards the blue-haired boy. Aburo-san, you're okay, he screamed as he jumped and hugged the teen. Little Cloudlet, hey. Aburo greeted and lifted the boy to his arms. We visited you in the clinic earlier, but Zashi was so loud, so we had to transfer here to not wake you up. Izuku giggled. It's fine. Howaboo. He stopped himself as his eyes landed on the grazed cheek of Aburo-san. There were also scratches on his arms like Mom, but his clothes were already changed into clean ones, unlike Mom. You're hurt, he mumbled as his eyes start to tear up. Hey, it's alright, little Cloudlet. It's just scratches, okay. Heroes are tough, you know. He's right, Izuku-kun. Aburo is too thick-headed to be hurt anyway. Aizawa reassures with a tone that didn't really reassure the greenette. Awa, is this the little Zuko we've been hearing so much about? An unfamiliar girl approached Izuku, who was now put on a fluffy cloud by Aburo. My name's Nimuri, hero name Midnight. You can call me Auntie. She squealed and pinched the boy's cheeks gently. Izuku wasn't bothered at all as he leaned on the teen's touch. Is it really appropriate to make Zuko call you Auntie? Hizashi asked, skeptical. We're still teenagers, you know. Hey, Izuku-kun. My name's Tensei Ada. You can call me whatever you want. Me and Nimuri are the friends of these knuckleheads, but it's the first time we're meeting. Another blue-haired boy, this time darker than Aburo-san, greeted him with a smile. Izuku returned the smile with a wide beam as he thought about what to call them. Auntie, Sho-san, Uncle Zashi, Ada-san, and Aburo-nai-chan. He declared as he pointed at the teens one by one. Everyone stopped talking when he spoke. And then he realized he hasn't given Recovery Girl a nickname. And then Recovery Girl for Recovery Girl. Collective always and so cute echoed in the classroom as the teens closed in on Izuku for a hug. Well, if you're calling these delinquents with cute names, I think you should call me Gran. The greenette's eyes sparkled. Gran. The teens chuckled. Take care of him for now. I have to talk with Nezu. His mom will pick him up soon, said Recovery Girl as she exited the room and left them alone. Izuku-kun, I've heard so much about you, you little bundle of joy, Nimuri cooed as she lifted the boy and crushed him in a hug. He let her do it, of course, especially since she smelled so nice, like strawberries, but not really. Wait, before that, why does Aburo get to be called Nai-chan while I'm just called Ida-san? Tensei's tone was as playful as his grin. Because Loud Cloud is my favorite hero in the whole universe, the greenette declared, oblivious to the growing blush on Aburo's face. The Cloud user became the center of teasing due to Izuku's words. He, on the other hand, was enjoying the genuine laughter of the 5 friends around him. Maybe this could be like him, Kaken, and Toshi when they grow up, teasing each other on a room in their dream school, UA High. He'll surely see some interesting and powerful quirks from his future classmates. Oh, speaking of quirks, Auntie, can I ask what your quirk is? All the teenagers ceased their teasing as Nimuri spoke up proudly. My quirk is called Somnambulist. I produce pink gas from my pores that can put villains to sleep. Whoa, that's so cool. How about you, Ada-san? It's called Engine. I have these mufflers on my elbows just like at cars, and I can use it to make myself faster, Tensei explained. Izuku's mouth was wide open as he realized how cool the quirks of these 5 friends were. They could be a superhero team like the X-Men. All your quirks sound so cool. My quirk is called, actually, We didn't get to finish my Quirk registration, right? His excited voice was quickly replaced by a somber tone when he remembered what happened earlier today. I still don't know what to call it. Don't look sad, little cloudlet, 𝗵𝗃𝗀 assured as ruffled his hair. I actually thought of a cool name for your Quirk. How about Void Master? Sounds cool, right? Void Master. 𝐬𝐸 tilted his head in question. A single loud clap made the greenette flinch. That name fits your power accurately, said 𝗍𝗎. And it's not exaggerated either. You really are the master of void with your Quirk. 𝐬𝐸 agreed with a thumbs up. Aizawa and Tensei also showed their approval by nodding their heads with a smile. So, Void Master, huh? It really does sound cool. Can I really use that as a name? I really want to. Of course you can, little cloudlet. Now, since we have time to spare, do you know how to play this game? 𝗵𝗃 slammed down a box of cards on the desk before Izuku. Uno, the game that destroys friendships. What? A game that strengthens friendships, Zuku. And so the game begun. 𝗵𝗃 was the dealer, and beside him was Izuku. The teens taught the greenette how to play, giving him tips and tricks to lose his cards more easily. They refrained from putting +4 seconds and +2 seconds whenever Izuku's the next player. Because of this, the greenette always won first. And when he's already won, the war between the friends starts for real. They played multiple games. Each time, the losers were different. Tensei was not adept in the game at all, but he still manages to win from time to time. Aizawa, on the other hand, played like a skilled gambler. He often targeted 𝐬𝐸 with his +4 seconds and color changes, causing the blonde to lose more times than Tensei did. 𝗍𝗎 and 𝗵𝗃 were casual, only doing what's necessary to win, and not really crushing others like Aizawa and 𝐬𝐸. But when the blonde suddenly put down consecutive +4 seconds when it was 𝗍𝗎's turn next, it was safe to say that she collaborated with Aizawa to punish their common enemy for the rest of their games. Izuku was happy that they still include him in their conversations and their teasing. They were really good company, especially Auntie Nem, that's what he decided to call her. She was very fun to be with, and she was the one that often tells jokes. Well, her and Uncle 𝐬𝐸. It was about 7 rounds later when Mom arrived in the room. Hey, sweetie, how are you doing? Mom, he yelled and abandoned his cards as he ran. Your eyes are red. Did you cry again? A wet chuckle escaped Mom's lips. No, Zuku, it's just, the dust from my clothes hit my eyes. Oh, okay. We have something to talk about, okay. And here, you forgot 𝗵𝗃𝗻. Izuku squealed and hugged closely. I totally forgot about 𝗵𝗃𝗻. Let me introduce my newest friends, Mom. This is Auntie Nem. And this is Ida-san. They're good friends with Uncle 𝐬𝐸, Sho-san, and Nai-chan. Mom looked surprised for some reason, perhaps from his new nicknames. I didn't realize you were calling them with such intimate names, Zuku, she remarked with a raised brow. The teenagers blushed, and it was 𝗵𝗃 that tried to explain things while stuttering. The green-headed woman giggled and told him it was no problem. Zuku, we have to talk about your future, okay. We can meet with your friends tomorrow, she said again, thinking about how it's already 6 p.m. Izuku was already saying his goodbyes when a new voice entered the room. That won't be necessary, Mrs. Midoriya. Principal Nezu, along with the officers of the Heroes Public Safety Commission, will be discussing the next course of action regarding your son. Please allow me to escort you. A girl, about the age of Auntie Nem, informed them. She had purple short hair that had streaks of pink on it, and her face was passive like Sho-san. The commission's here. But Nezu and I just talked. They're not here physically. They'll be communicating through a call, but your attendance, as well as Izuku-kun's, is required. 𝗵𝗃 cleared his throat, shifting the attention on him. Then we could just go together, Mrs. This meeting will be highly confidential. Only people invited by both Nezu and the commission are allowed. Please understand. Izuku doesn't really understand what's happening, but it sounded really important, although he had no idea what the commission was supposed to mean. Are we going with the pretty lady, Mom? He said in a timid voice as he hugged 𝗵𝗃𝗻. His mother looked conflicted as her gaze exchanged from to the lady and back to him again. Mom eventually nodded with a deep sigh and ruffled his hair. Yes, sweetie, we'll go, she said, addressing him. We'll get going now, Shirakumo-kun. Thank you for everything. Please return home safe. The teens nodded as the mother and son were led by the mysterious girl. She escorted them to the conference room of UA, except this time, additional security systems and wall panels were installed to prevent any sort of espionage. Only quiet whispers served as background noise inside the room. The normally white walls were covered by metallic plates, and the room was dimly lit to allow visuals of the 3 holograms already present at the table. Principal Nezu sat at the head of the table. Beside him were Recovery Girl, Endeavor, and, oh my gosh, All Might. Izuku's jaw dropped. He excitedly patted Mom's hand that was holding his own as he pointed at All Might in a very blatant manner. His behavior caught everyone's attention, and all talking ceased. 𝐀𝐦 tried to satiate her son, but it was too late. So, this is the boy that could disrupt the balance between heroes and villains, you say? He doesn't look much, one of the holograms said. Excuse me, you're talking about. Now, the principal interjected. Calm down everyone. I'm sure it's hard to believe, but you'll see. Izuku-kun, can you please show your quirk to our friends today? Perhaps a portal to this location. He instructs and showed a picture of a compound on the screen. Okay, Izuku replied not 1 second later and tossed a void orb while visualizing the location shown to him. A portal opened on the picture shown by Nenzu, which was actually a live feed from the location. Startled sounds from the commission officers, as well as 𝗵𝗲𝗏, All Might, and the lady that escorted them. But isn't that the top secret facility overseen by the Public Safety Commission? Yes, indeed, Nenzu grinned manically. Now, do you still think my claim is baseless? No one replied. The principal was quite ecstatic to see everyone's on the same page now. Mrs. Midoriya, Izuku-kun, please have seats so we can start this meeting. When the two were comfortable in their chairs, he continued speaking. With that out of the way, we shall think of the best solution to protect Izuku-kun. And I won't allow the commission to train him, he stressed with narrowed eyes towards the commission officers. He'll be learning alongside his peers. Letting the commission train him is the best course of action. Nenzu, that's the best help we can give. Is that so? You wouldn't want me to go into detail about the secrets of HPSC, do you, Commissioner? Nenzu spoke casually as he sipped on his teacup. One of the officers grimaced. Then what do you suggest, Principal? The Chimera failed to hide the grin that appeared on his face when they realized who's in charge. He'll stay here in UA, overlooked by teachers and hero students at all times. The only help we need from the commission is the alteration of his records, backup when needed, and doubled efforts in searching for All for One, demanded Nenzu. That is, of course, if Mrs. Midoriya and Izuku-kun would want this treatment. Izuku stared at his mom, who had a dark look on her face. If it's what's best for Izuku, considering the situation. She pondered, her feet tapping on the floor and her forehead slick with cold sweat. Then I accept, she finally said with determination. Well, that's really sweet and all, mocked the woman commission officer. But is that really all of it, Nenzu? Your plan is rather shallow. Aren't you considering the fact that All for One might suspect we're hiding him in UA? She inquired with a roll of her eyes. Of course, that's not all of it. You must be on the lower end of intelligence among the commissioners. Nenzu smiled casually. Since All for One blatantly allowed us to know that he's after Izuku-kun, we can use it to our advantage. The commission watches over the Quirk Registry Office, correct? If it isn't too difficult, I'd suggest finding shapeshifters and tasking them to mimic Izuku on public. Of course, this would also mean more concentrated patrols on the areas where you mobilize them, and heroes that constantly watch over them for any danger. I'm assuming you want to capture as many forces of All for One as you can in hopes of getting information. 𝗵𝗲𝗏 inquired in a deep commanding voice. It's not a bad plan. But isn't that too risky for the shapeshifters? Said All Might. Well, Nenzu began. It's more of a controlled risk. Actually, less risky than simply allowing All for One to roam free, waiting for him to attack us. If we're all that, can you at least tell us who this All for One is? I know that it's a top secret information, but it turns out that we're already in the middle of it, so my son and I deserve to know, 𝗀𝐻 said, gripping Izuku beside her. Everyone became silent. She glared at each person inside the conference room, until All Might spoke up. He's a villain that has the power to steal other people's quirks. Over the years, he has already stockpiled powerful quirks from heroes, but he has yet to gain a warp quirk. If he gets one, especially something as strong as Izuku-kun's, then Izuku stopped listening after that. A villain that can steal quirks was after him. He knew his quirk was special, even the doctor told him so, but he didn't think it was this special. So the meeting was about protecting him. But heroes were supposed to be the ones that protect others. How could he become a hero if he needs help this early? 𝐾𝐦 would tell him he's being weak. 𝐾𝐦 never needed anyone to protect him. He stared at his glowing hands, the voices of the adults becoming background noise for him. Everyone was thinking of different solutions and doing their best in order to protect him. Izuku clutched Sparkmite closer, making all the negative thoughts disappear. His glowing hands began to lose their shine until they became normal again. Maybe everything would turn out fine. All he needed to do was to trust the adults. The people in this room are the most amazing people that Izuku knew after all. The number one hero All Might, Nenzu, who's the most intelligent person on Japan, and there's also the flame hero 𝗵𝗲𝗏. They're all so cool. Izuku should really introduce himself to them later. But they already know his name though. Oh, maybe he could introduce his quirk. That wasn't actually registered yet. Mom, he whispered. Mom, I still haven't registered my quirk today. This captured the attention of 𝗀𝐻, and she gasped in realization. Wait, she says to shift the attention on her. Izuku has appointments regarding his quirk. What about those? His quirk registration was interrupted by the villain attack, and his checkup on 𝐼-Medicals is only 2 weeks away. What? Does he have a medical condition that needs the expertise of 𝐼-Medicals? One of the commissioners asked. 𝗀𝐻 clenched her teeth. is Quirk has weaknesses, ones that couldn't be explained or detected by normal equipment, at least according to the doctor that treated him from Quirk exhaustion. Nedzu hummed. The Hero Public Safety Commission can handle your Quirk registration. But I'm afraid that no Japanese organization possesses jurisdiction over eye medicals, so we have to comply with their normal guidelines and go there ourselves. Wouldn't that defeat the purpose of protecting the child? Not as long as he's accompanied by powerful heroes at all times, Nedzu reasoned. I see. Then I suppose it's settled. The commission will assist in this plan to finally capture All for One, as well as help Izuku Midoriya realize his full potential. This will require a lot of paperwork, but for now, allow us to offer help in the form of our best recruit, one of the officers said. Please accept Lady Nagant as one of Izuku's prime bodyguards. Everyone's gaze fell upon the silent girl standing by the door of the room. Izuku did wonder who she was, but the kid didn't expect her to be someone so important. With cold eyes and a confident posture, she bowed her head and spoke in a commanding tone. I am now in service of Midoriya-san. Rest assured, you are safe in my care. Quirk, Void Master, the ability to open two-way portals from one point to another by creating a green void orb and tossing it midair. Approximate range is the user's line of sight, or a memorized place without hindrance. If an object, living or non-living, touches a void orb, it teleports them to the desired location instead. I think they nailed the description. Wouldn't you agree? I don't understand it very well, but it sounded cool, Izuku said excitedly. Yeah, it does. Right, Nagant? The girl in question sighed. Please leave me out of this, Kumo-kun. I'm only here to protect Izuku-kun and his mother. Abu. Well, if you don't agree, we won't force you, he shrugged. It's been 3 days since Izuku and his mom started living in UA. Nedzu arranged a large suite for them, near the principal's office and the teacher's lounge. This way, even if the little greenette is playing, he wouldn't bother the productivity of the staff and the students. Lady Nagant, whom refused to give her real name, also lived with the Midoriyas. She has her own room within the suite, and she's always near Izuku in case of an attack. He was currently sitting on the carpeted floor beside Oboro Nai-chan as they played snakes and ladders. They had a small break when Nai-chan read the letter sent by the registry office regarding his quirk. Izuku's really happy that his favorite hero wasn't really busy today. Yesterday, it was Uncle Zashi and Shosen that visited him, tomorrow Auntie Nem and Ida-san. It was really fun living in UA, except for one thing. He hasn't seen Kaken and Toshi since forever, and he really missed them. Mom said they'll visit soon, but he doesn't know when soon would come. He wanted to play heroes so bad. Hey little cloudlet, Nai-chan snapped him out of his thoughts. What you thinking there, bud? You haven't rolled your dice for a while. It's nothing. I just really miss Kaken and Toshi. Nai-chan ruffled his hair and placed a kiss on his head. Don't worry, okay. You can play with them soon. But right now, he paused as he lifted Izuku and put him atop his crossed legs. You're with me. So, cheer up little cloudlet. Izuku giggled. Okay, it's my turn then. He rolled the dice, giving him a 7. That's good. If it weren't for the fact that he landed on a snake. Down you go little cloudlet. Nai-chan teased as he tickled Izuku's sides. Stop Nai-chan, he pleaded between laughs. You know, the blue-headed boy dragged. There's a way that you can climb back up after landing on a snake. Izuku whipped his head to look at Nai-chan with excitement. Really? What is it? Oboro grinned. Legend says that if you hug your favorite hero, the snake will allow you to climb on its back. You'll even become friends with the 𝐶NA. The greenette didn't even let the teenager finish as he smothered him with a tight hug, wrapping his small arms around the bluehead's neck. I love you, Nai-chan. His favorite hero hugged back, and it was the warmest, most comfortable hug Izuku ever had. Except when he hugs Mom, of course. Just like Nai-chan said, his piece climbed back up the snake, making his piece advance further than Nai-chan. Yai, I'm gonna beat you again, he boasted with a wide smile. Their game continued on, Izuku having unbelievable luck as he practically missed every snake and climbed almost every ladder. Oboro didn't mind though. As long as the little cloudlet was happy, he finds himself smiling as well. In the end, it was Izuku that won, which wasn't a surprise really. Congratulations little cloudlet. You're really good at this game, am I right, Nagant? She didn't reply, so he simply shrugged. As winner of the game, and my favorite little cloudlet in the whole wide world, I award you this. Oboro's voice was overly dramatic at his declaration. On his hand was an embroidered loud cloud patch, similar to the one he had on his hero costume. I made it myself, you know. Since I'm still new to the hero gig, you'd have to wait for official merch, little cloudlet. Izuku didn't care if it was official merch or not. This gift was made by Nai-chan himself, so he'll treasure it for the rest of his life. He took the patch and held onto it like gold. Look, Sparkmite, I have a gift from Nai-chan. The plushie in question was sitting beside the teenager, like a watchful eye guarding Izuku. I actually have a gift for Sparkmite as well. He pulled another thing from his back pocket. Close your eyes, little cloudlet. he sing-songed. When he was done with his little surprise, he ruffled Izuku's hair. "You can look now, 𝐻𝐸𝗎." The greenette's eyes widened at how adorable 𝐲𝗏𝗏 looked. He wasn't really changed that much. It's that a singular pin that looked similar to the patch he received was put on his plushie's chest. You could probably only put that patch on one shirt at a time, so I figured I'd make some custom pins too. One for 𝐲𝗏𝗏. He pinned a similar one on Izuku's clothes, and another one for you. That way, we can match up. And when you have your hero costume, you could put the patch I gave you there, so we'll be 𝐷𝗫𝗏𝗏 buddies. Izuku squealed cause that was such an awesome idea. And 𝐲𝗏𝗏 looked so cute too. I love it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, 𝐻𝐸-chan. He hugged the teen again, this time bringing 𝐲𝗏𝗏 between them. Izuku would surely use this pin every single day. He doesn't care if the colors don't match most of his clothes. Just as he sat back on his original place, the door to their suite opened, and in came his mom holding a bag of groceries. "Mom, I have presents from 𝐴𝐴RO 𝐻𝐸-chan. They're so cool," he said proudly as he hopped on place a few inches away from her. "That's good to hear, sweetie. Did you have fun?" "MHM, Mrs. Midoriya, let me." "Oh, thank you Shirakumo-kun," Mom said as she handed him the grocery bags. Izuku was retelling how he won every snake and ladders game he and 𝐻𝐸-chan played, as well as the part where he was given the loud cloud patch and pins. He was smiling the whole time, which also made 𝐻𝐸 smile. The groceries weren't much, so they all finished storing the items quickly. "Hey, I need to go now. I promised the squad that we'd hang out when you arrive, Mrs. Midoriya." "It's totally fine. We have Nagant-sen with us here. And a lot of the UA teachers too. 𝐻𝐸-chan's gonna go now, little cloudlet. Take care, okay?" he said, ruffling the boy's hair. "Take care of Izuku, Nagant. I won't forgive you otherwise." The guard let out an amused hum as 𝐴𝐴RO exited the door. "Take care, 𝐻𝐸-chan." Izuku waved happily as the teen completely disappeared from sight. "Did you get me strawberry ice cream, Mom?" he asked, looking up to her. 𝐻𝐸's face shifted from her genial look to an awkward and apologetic facade. "Oh, sorry, sweetie. Mommy forgot. But I really wanted ice cream." Izuku did get ice cream, but only 2 days later when they were heading for Tokyo to have his appointment with 𝐴𝐸-medicals. He was currently seated in an armored SUV together with 3 bodyguards. Lady Nagant drove the car, Endeavor was in the front seat, and 𝐴𝐴RO sat beside him at the back. The cloud user wasn't initially part of the plan, but Nezu revised it when he realized how cold the other 2 guards were. The car ride was mostly silent. Only the radio, the light humming of 𝐻𝐸-chan, and Izuku's eating noises could be heard. Izuku was fine with that, but the same couldn't be said about everyone else. Endeavor was visibly fidgeting on his seat, while Nagant gripped the wheel stronger than what's necessary. Even with a tension so thick in the air, the greenette kept on eating his strawberry bar like nothing was wrong. "How far is Tokyo, again?" he suddenly piped up, causing the others in the car to jolt. About an hour, I guess. Don't worry, little cloudlet, we'll get there soon. It's actually an hour and 45 minutes, without traffic, so expect around 2 hours of sitting." "Child," said Endeavor in an indifferent manner. 2 hours. That's too long. Even 𝐲𝗏𝗏 and 𝐻𝐸-chan couldn't entertain him for that long. He needs to move around, or use his quirk, otherwise he'd be really anxious once they reach 𝐴𝐸-medicals. "Can't I just teleport there?" he mumbled absent-mindedly. The adults all looked at him surprised. Well, except Nagant of course, but she still looked at him through the rearview mirror. "Isn't it too far? And you haven't been there yet, lil cloudlet. Are you saying you could go anywhere you want just by thinking of it?" the flame hero asked in a suspicious tone. "I'm not really sure." He trailed off as he waved his ice cream bar around. "But I did teleport to a snowy mountain once, but Mom said it was just a hallucination." "I'm sure it wasn't, because I really felt the cold that time." Their car suddenly halted at a red light, causing everyone to jerk on their seats. "Sorry about that," said Nagant. "In any case, we are instructed by the Commission and Nezu to safely guide you to 𝐴𝐸-medicals and back. Besides, you are forbidden by the principal to use your quirk until we know about the details of its weakness. Please just sit tight, Izuku-kun. And when we return to UA, your friends will be waiting for you." Izuku gasped excitedly. "Kaken and Toshi are visiting." "Really?" "Yup. So, promise 𝐻𝐸-chan you'll behave, okay?" 𝐴𝐴RO replied instead. MHM. He smiled as he hugged 𝐲𝗏𝗏 closer and nuzzled the side of 𝐻𝐸-chan. His plushie now wore the loud cloud pin that 𝐻𝐸-chan gave him, and the shirt Izuku was wearing also had the other pin attached to it. Mom made a remark about how he, 𝐲𝗏𝗏, and 𝐻𝐸-chan all had matching loud cloud logos, which made 𝐻𝐸-chan blush and him jump up in agreement. Maybe he should also buy Nagant merch to see her blush. Nagant-chan. "Yes, Izuku-kun. Do they sell hero merch of you? I really wanna buy some." Another harsh step on the brakes caused the passengers of the car to jolt. A low growl escaped from Endeavor, which prompted 𝐴𝐴RO to satiate the situation. "You shouldn't really fluster Nagant like that, little cloudlet." "I'm not flustered, and you're also not driving." The temperature inside the car suddenly got warmer when 𝗵𝗲 spoke. Just drive so we can get this over with. And so they did. Everyone thought that was the end of conversations. But Izuku, as the curious child that he was, piped up again. 𝗵𝗲-san, do you know where they sell the latest limited edition 𝗵𝗲 action figure? Every time I go outside with Mom, we try to find one in stores, but we always end up with nothing. The flame hero cleared his throat before he spoke. You, buy my hero merch. I thought you were more of an All Might fan. Well, I am an All Might fan, but I'm also your fan, 𝗵𝗲-san. But my favorite hero will always be 𝗵𝗲 𝐍𝐴-chan, Loud Cloud. 𝗵𝗲 laughed nervously at that, thinking that he might have offended the number 2 hero somehow. That wasn't the case, of course, as 𝗵𝗲 was actually trying to hide a small grin. Well, if you really want that limited edition merch you spoke of, I'll call my assistant later to retrieve one for you. But you better behave and listen to what we say, or no action figure. Got it, child? Izuku's eyes sparkled. Thank you, 𝗵𝗲-san. The greenette behaved himself after that. For a span of 2 hours, the greenette played with Sparkmite, did hero trivia with 𝐍𝐴-chan, and learned fire hazard practices from 𝗵𝗲. The flame hero made an offhand comment about how water-based quirks aren't always the best when putting out fires, right after Izuku said that water beats fire every time. He was quite thankful to learn something new today. With a couple of topics that were brought up in conversations, Izuku didn't get bored at all. Before long, their car was finding a space inside the 𝐼-Medical's parking lot. 𝐍𝐴-chan took Izuku's hand into his and led the way to the building. 𝗵𝗲 and 𝐁𝐴 trailed behind them, both vigilant for threats as they walked. With a bustling main hall that looks more like a hotel than a hospital, Izuku's guards became more wary with the amount of strangers around them. There are other heroes stationed around the hospital and inside, but their identities remain unknown for the 3 main guards. The greenette was shaking with anticipation to know everything about his quirk. He was only moments away from finally understanding how his weaknesses affect him, so he could finally start training himself to counter these. But apart from that, 𝐼-Medical's was huge and super beautiful too. The crystal ceiling was super duper high that Izuku thinks only flying quirks could reach it. The floors sported a mystique pattern, and the air didn't smell like antiseptic at all. The last one particularly amazed Izuku, since that's always the one thing that he associates hospitals with. He gripped Sparkmite closer to himself as they went to the front desk. They were greeted by a kind-faced woman with blonde hair. Oh, good morning, Sir 𝗵𝗲. What services can we offer you today? I'm actually here to escort this child, Izuku Midoriya. His appointment was rescheduled to be today instead of next week. I see, let me check on that. She trailed off as she checked her computer. After a few clicks, she looked up with a smile. Okay, I've confirmed his schedule. His appointment is with the radiology department, but for the meantime, please follow Nurse Joy so that she can check Izuku-kun's vitals. Well, you heard the kind lady. Let's go, little cloudlet, said 𝗵𝗲 as he followed the nurse that was supposedly named Joy. When they stepped foot on the maze-like hallways, it finally looked like a hospital, but still very modern and advanced. They rode on an elevator and stopped at the 4th floor. Like UA, one part of the hallway was entirely a large window that showed the rest of Tokyo. He didn't know how far they walked, but they did pass by many patients and workers. By the time they entered a private room, Izuku counted about 5, maybe 7 people that asked for 𝗵𝗲's autograph. You could wait here outside. The room isn't quite spacious. Don't worry, this shouldn't we're still coming. We were instructed to protect Izuku during the entire process. Please understand, said 𝐁𝐴 as she opened the door for everyone to enter. Oh, okay then. Nurse Joy laughed nervously. Izuku-kun, please take off your shoes and anything you're wearing aside from your shorts and shirt. I'd need accurate reading with your vitals so that our radiologists could do their best. While Izuku was having his appointment in 𝐼-Medical's, 𝗀𝐻 stayed in UA, practically doing nothing. She had insisted on going with Izuku, since she's his mother after all, but Nezu and the commission were against it. Allowing her to go along with the warp user would mean that the heroes would look after 2 civilians instead of 1. Furthermore, she'd only put herself in unnecessary danger, since Izuku could just teleport away from harm with a single instruction from his guards, and 𝐀𝐻 could not. In the end, she had accepted their proposal and stayed in their personal suite inside UA. But of course she couldn't simply rest while her son was in potential danger. She fidgeted with her phone as she laid down her bed. Even the soft mattress couldn't make her less anxious. Maybe she should call Mitsuki. They still haven't talked since the Midoriya's living arrangement changed. And the last time they called each other, Katsuki was not in good shape. He was there on the scene when Izuku disintegrated a man with no emotion. And 𝐀𝐻 didn't even realize that she was already dialing Mitsuki's number. Only the ringing on the other end stirred her out of daze. The ringtone stopped, replaced by her friend's voice. Hey and 𝐀𝐻. You called. How are you doing? Is everything fine on your end? 𝐀𝐻 sighed. Mitsuki, you can't ask if I'm fine when you sound like that. How's Katsuki-kun? Is he alright now? Her friend was silent for a moment, but then a sob escaped her lips. Katsuki, he hasn't. He hasn't left his room since the incident. He doesn't lock the door, so we still manage to make him eat, 𝗵𝗃𝗲. He won't talk to us, or to anyone. He freaks out every time he sees something I mean. I don't know what to do. Every time he sees what, Mitsuki? What freaks him out? Mitsuki didn't reply the first time she asked, and so 𝐀𝐦 asked again and again until her friend finally snapped. Green, 𝐀𝐦. She paused. He freaks out when he sees anything green. I am sorry. I don't know how it came to this. 𝐀𝐦's grip on her phone tightened as she stood up and walked to the kitchen. I don't blame Katsuki-kun. For that. But how will you help him? We've tried hiring a therapist. But he wouldn't talk. A sob broke out of Mitsuki. But there's one last solution we haven't tried. What solution? Mitsuki took a deep breath on her end before speaking. Hitoshi-kun's mom, Atsuko-san. We aren't close but they visited here yesterday. She said Hitoshi really missed his friends. But they couldn't visit Izuku because, well, you know. Anyway, we talked with her, Masaru and I, and we told her why Katsuki couldn't play. Hitoshi played on the backyard while we talked. And she told us she might have a solution. She stopped for several moments, but 𝐀𝐦 waited. Her quirk allows her to erase someone's memories, as long as they consent to it. She said she might be able to help Katsuki, but I don't know if it's the right thing to do. Have she done it before? I mean erasing memories. Did Atsuko-sen used to do that? Well, Mitsuki's voice sounded broke and hoarse. She told us that she used to work as a psychiatrist, but she quit when they started their ice cream business. She said that the effects of her quirk diminish over the months. But since Katsuki's still very young, her quirk could last for several years. 𝐀𝐦 didn't know what to say. Her friend's child, her nephew by heart, was now crippled by the memory of Izuku's action. If Katsuki-kun can live like a normal kid again, despite being in ignorance, then I think it's the right thing. When he grows up and Atsuko-sen's quirk fades, Katsuki-kun will face his trauma. This time, alongside Izuku and Hitoshi. If you really think so, Masaru and I actually agreed that we'll consult for your advice. We were in favor of Atsuko-sen using her quirk. We'll do it. I really hope that Katsuki speaks to her. I hope Katsuki-kun gets better soon. I'll see. Mitsuki didn't even have the opportunity to say goodbye. All that greeted her was the static sound of the other line getting cut suddenly. 𝐀𝐦, are you there? 𝐀𝐦, I can't believe that their head radiologist didn't come to work today of all days. They could have at least called about it. Izuku cringed from endeavor as the flame hero's quirk steadily grew out of control with his irritation. After Nurse Joy checked Izuku's vitals, got his blood sample, and determined if he has any ailments, they were visited by another nurse from a different department to tell them the head of the radiology department had an emergency. If you're willing, we could get you another reservation tomorrow, but with a different radiologist. The room was deathly silent for a moment, and the nurse that told them the news used it to scurry away. Any moment later would have surely made her panic as Endeavor's flames suddenly sparked to the point that the sprinkler system of the room was triggered. Luckily, they didn't get that wet as 𝗵𝗲 was able to create thick clouds that shielded them. But everyone knew better than to comment on that little slip-up. Endeavor looked pissed beyond words. It was 𝐁𝐸 that acted first, ushering them out of the room, and volunteered to call the commission regarding the new development. Meanwhile, 𝗵𝗲, Endeavor, and Izuku sat down outside the room they were just in. The greenette was content playing with Sparkmite and Nai-chan. It was the flame hero that kept whining about the circumstance, which Izuku could understand. He's the top 2 hero after all. He must be very busy. Let's go. The commission said they'll make another arrangement of guards for Izuku tomorrow, so you won't have to come, Endeavor-san. It's not about that. It's about wasting everybody's time here. But whatever, let's just go. 𝗵𝗲 and 𝐁𝐸 shared a look as Izuku followed Endeavor. Their walk was interrupted early though, as the nurse that told them about the absent radiologist ran towards them whilst out of breath. There's the professor, You can breathe first, then talk, okay, 𝐁𝐸 suggested. The nurse nodded, and after a few seconds of composing herself, she finally looked up. Although the head radiologist of iMedical's Tokyo is absent today, I received word that one of our experts from my island came to visit. After he learned of Midoriya's circumstance regarding his quirk, my supervisor told me that he'd be interested to diagnose Midoriya-kun himself. Who's he? You'll see. And so they walked. 𝐁𝐸 texted the commission about it as they went to find the radiology department. It was on the same floor they were in, but even then, their walk took longer than expected because of the size of the building. They eventually reached their destination, and when they opened the door, Izuku couldn't keep his jaw shut. On the other side of the entrance was Professor 𝐸𝐸 himself. Even though the professor hadn't introduced himself yet, the greenette already knew. He wouldn't mistake that kind-looking face anywhere. The nurse ushered them in and closed the door behind her as she left. You're David Shield. Are you the island scientist that nurse talked about?" 𝗵𝗲 voiced as he strode confidently and towered over the man. The large window that served as the back wall of the room provided refreshing natural light from outside. Several equipment were positioned around the room, all either in silver or blue. Some plants were even in the room. But even with the amiable atmosphere, 𝗵𝗲's suffocating presence dampened the mood. 𝐲𝐸 didn't reply for a moment, instead studying the face of the hero for any irritation. "Well, if you're referring to the scientist that volunteered to do the diagnosis on Izuku-kun, then you're correct. Did All Might call you here? You're his sidekick, right? I actually came to Japan in my own accord. But I have to ask, why do all of you seem wet? I don't remember it raining outside." Oboro cringed at the reminder while Nagant bit her lip. They really didn't want to talk about 𝗵𝗲's slip-up. They might end up as charred bodies if they did. Izuku didn't know what's going on. Why was 𝗵𝗲-san picking a fight with Professor 𝐲𝐸? He's All Might's sidekick. He's so cool. He looked up to Nai-chan, who looked really nervous, and Nagant-chan that was flexing her right elbow. Before things could escalate, Oboro stepped forward. "The nurse said you're interested with Izuku's quirk. Why is that?" The professor tore his gaze away from 𝗵𝗲 and shrugged. "When I read Izuku-kun's file about his quirk, I was fascinated. I've never seen a quirk behave the way it was described. Void Master. It sounded cool. Do you agree, Izuku-kun?" Izuku hopped forward at that. "Yeah, Nai-chan gave me that idea for that name. It's so cool. It is cool. So, do you want to learn what actually happens when you use Void Master?" There wasn't even a delay at Izuku's nod. "Well, I've already prepped the equipment. Please change into this, Izuku-kun." He showed them a medical gown that was often used in X-rays. "I believe 𝗵𝗲 can help you change, isn't that right?" I can do it. There's no need to both. I'll do it," the flame hero said with a growl. He gently took Izuku's hand into his and harshly tugged at the gown that 𝐲𝐸 presented to him. Izuku stood awkwardly as 𝗵𝗲 closed the curtain of the changing area. "Do you want me to turn around, little one? You could just give me your clothes when you're done and I'll fold them." "Well, everything but your underwear, of course." "Oh, okay," Izuku said anxiously and began to strip once the hero turned around. It only took a couple of moments and they were out again, this time with him wearing a medical gown. Nai-chan walked to him and ruffled his hair affectionately as he gave back Sparkmite. Nagant-chan was talking with 𝐲𝐸, and 𝗵𝗲 just sat on the corner, looking too big for the chair that he chose. You're done, Izuku-kun. Let's begin, shall we?" With a gesture of the professor's hand, the greenette walked towards the circular platform on the center of the large room that was surrounded by sensors. Oboro, Nagant, and 𝗵𝗲 all stood around him protectively, watching 𝐲𝐸's every move. The professor smiled amusedly, operating the equipment with extreme precision. Metal blinds covered the windows, and only the blue and white lighting of the various equipment illuminated the room. The sudden absence of light made the guards even more protective. Blue and green lasers scanned Izuku's whole body while the platform itself created a sort of holographic cage around the greenette. Izuku was mesmerized by the technology of 𝗓𝗏. This sort of equipment were things that he only saw in movies. "This is so cool. Did you help create these, Professor 𝐲𝐸? I did actually. I was one of the pioneers of the advancement in radiology." Another press of a button, and the platform rotated so that the other scanners could do a reading on Izuku's other angles. "Can you try to open a portal, Izuku-kun? But don't pass through it." The greenette complied and threw a void orb. When the portal manifested, a spike appeared in the monitor. 𝐲𝐸 hummed, "Now go to the very edge of the platform, and try warping yourself towards the other end." Again, Izuku complied and the reading was recorded. This went on for a few minutes, with Izuku making remarks on what's happening, Oboro piping up every now and then, and the professor answering every question they asked. 𝗵𝗲 and Nagant were mostly silent, but no one was surprised with that. When they were done, the metal blinds opened, pouring natural light back into the room. "Well, I've got the readings and analysis of Izuku's quirk. So, what does it say?" said Oboro as he helped Izuku off the platform and let him sat down on his lap as he took a seat. "The results are interesting, to say the least. I've never seen anything like it before, truly." "Well, can we get on with it? This information is important for the entirety of Japan," 𝗵𝗲 voiced, slightly agitated by the long wait. 𝐲𝐸 chuckled and adjusted his glasses. "Yes, I've grasped onto that already. Otherwise, a single boy wouldn't need to be escorted and guarded by multiple heroes, despite being unrelated to anyone important for the government. In any case, I'll explain the readings in a simpler way." He took a nearby stool and sat down across the four visitors. Izuku nodded in anticipation. He hugged Sparkmite as he nuzzled closer to Nai-chan, and listened to what Professor 𝐲𝐸 had to say. Void Master uses cosmic microwave background radiation to fuel Izuku's teleportation. And before you ask, cosmic microwave background radiation, or CMBR, is a type of radiation that exists in every corner of the universe, an energy that originated from the Big Bang. 𝐁𝐸 made exploding gestures that made Izuku laugh, putting a smile on his face. According to the readings, CMBR passes through Izuku's brain before coagulating to become a void orb. This in turn causes radioactivity of your brain. Every time you create a void orb, your brain gets radioactive for about 10%. Once you reach 100%, your body will completely shut down. So you mean to say that 𝐬𝐻𝐸𝐿 can only create 9 void orbs a day to not trigger a fatigue? Asked 𝐁𝐸. No, it's not like that. The radiation in his brain does not stack. Once Izuku creates a void orb, 10% radiation right. But then when he closes that void orb, the radioactivity will be gone as well. However, when he creates multiple void orbs at the same time, that's when the CMBR levels stack. What I'm saying is, Izuku can only create limited void orbs at once. When he closes those, he could create another set. 𝗵 hummed. That's not really much of a weakness, considering that what Izuku creates are essentially doorways. A single portal would do for combat and rescue. Yes, you're correct, 𝐁𝐸 agreed with a curt nod. But it doesn't end there. The longer Izuku doesn't close a void orb, the radiation in his brain also accumulates. I'm not certain of the exact increase rate every second, since calculations with radiation could get complicated. But I'd recommend not leaving your portals for longer than a minute. And whether I say void orb or portal, the principle remains the same. Once you use or close your quirk, the coagulated CMBR will return to the environment and free you from any fatigue. Izuku slightly understood what the professor was trying to say. Basically, don't create multiple portals or void orbs if it could be avoided. And never leave his void orbs or portals unclosed for a minute. He could do that. That'll be a piece of cake. How would you look at that? The limits of your quirk don't hinder you from becoming more powerful, little 𝐀𝐦. If you follow 2 rules, then you could teleport anytime you want. Isn't that cool? Yeah, it's cool. He agreed with an excited jump. Can I use my quirk now? Can I? Before 𝐴𝐴RO could agree, it was 𝐁𝐸 that spoke first. Yes, you can, Izuku-kun. But you can only teleport and create portals inside this room. If you disobey, I'll tell Nezu and the commission to block off production of strawberry ice cream. Got it. Izuku gasped in faux betrayal. Not the strawberry ice cream. 𝐴𝐴RO, let's go. With a touch of his void orb, Izuku appeared on the other side of the room as he made flying noises with his plushie. 𝐁𝐸 looked at the boy with an amused smile. To think that a boy this age could possess a quirk so powerful. Well, I'll see you again later. I just need to process the readings and upload them to the database. I won't take long, so please wait while I compile all the results for you to take home. The bodyguards nodded and watched the professor leave the room. Once they were left alone, no one bothered to start a conversation. They simply watched as Izuku played with 𝐴𝐴RO from their respective seats. Although 𝐴𝐴RO did strike a conversation with 𝐁𝐸, but she just replied curtly, indicating she didn't want to talk. 𝗵, on the other hand, was becoming restless. His feet was bouncing uncontrollably as they waited. After a moment, the door opened again. This time, an unfamiliar middle-aged man with white hair entered the room. "Ah, I finally found you," he said with a wry smile. "The professor told me to bring Izuku-kun to him. Something about a private discussion with the boy's quirk." 𝗵 stood up suspiciously, flickering his flames in slight warning. "Izuku, stand behind me." The greenette looked confused at first, but he complied when Nai-chan nodded at him. Did 𝐁𝐸 really say that? He should know that we're here to escort the child in his every move. The man, who was dressed in a lab coat and a white polo paired with black slacks, chuckled breathily. "Actually, he didn't. I just made that up," he said as he aimed his right arm at them. With a menacing glare, the sleeves on his right arms expanded to the point of tear and released a blast of wind. 𝐴𝐴RO luckily was able to push Izuku away in time. The attack managed to destroy the large window behind them, as well as parts of the floor. The 4 were unharmed by the attack, but they were now separated by the broken floor, with Izuku and 𝗵 on one side, and 𝐴𝐴RO and 𝐁𝐸 on the other. The greenette was beginning to panic as green sparks start to appear around him, and it was 𝗵 that noticed first. Fast reflexes befitting of a hero," the man said as his left hand produced flames, while reddish-black tendrils began to emerge from his outstretched right arm. 𝗵 grimaced. He grabbed Izuku's shoulder and looked at him with a gentle expression. "Warp us out of here." The reminder snapped Izuku out of his panic. He gripped 𝐴𝐴RO tighter with his left arm and created 2 void orbs with his right palm. He tossed one towards Nai-chan and grasped the other while 𝗵 held him. With the sound of ripping paper, him and the flame hero were now in the parking lot of 𝐴𝐸. But even with the advantage in distance, 𝗵 didn't waste any time as he carried Izuku in one arm and used his flames to propel them midair. To say that All For One was impressed would be an understatement. That kid, who didn't even look older than a 6-year-old, managed to warp away within a second of 𝗵's command. He even managed to toss a second warp towards the two other guards. The blue-haired teen grasped the girl and was about to catch the green ball, but All For One's tendrils were faster. With a blink of an eye, he was outside the hospital and overlooking the whole parking lot. The sensation of warping was surreal. He'd never experienced it before. But there's no time to gush about teleportation when his target was being carried away by the number 2 hero. Using a combination of quirks, All For One simulated flight as he chased after them. The busy streets of Tokyo became witnesses for the ongoing tag. Every time the villain attacked with energy projectiles or fireballs, 𝗫𝐬𝐻 intercepted with a blast of flame. Somehow, their attacks were equal in power, which frustrated All For One. Sweat marred his skin as the afternoon sun glared at them, possibly making 𝗫𝐻𝐻's attacks hotter, thus becoming stronger. They've already taken several turns, but every time, the hero seemed to avoid the streets where All For One put his men for lookout. Even so, he was slowly catching up to the pair and aimed his reddish-black tendrils at the hero. He attacked with the intent to kill, but his targets disappeared in a flash of green after 𝗫𝐻𝐻 yelled now. The man stopped his trajectory and glared at the direction of the hospital. They're surely back there again. He adjusted himself and flew back to where he came from. The buildings became a blur as the villain used his top speed. When he was back at the hospital, there were no signs of them. He expected that, of course, but not the bullet that dug itself on his shoulder the moment he looked back out to the parking lot. Shit, he cursed as he gripped his injury. The girl and the blue-haired boy were staring at him a few blocks away, sitting atop a cloud. He aimed his right hand at them, about to release another wind cannon, this time tenfold stronger. But a pillar of flame came rushing towards him with extreme prejudice. No part of the hospital was damaged, and neither was he. All For One was able to create a barrier to protect himself. Looking at the young pair on a cloud, and 𝗫𝐻𝐻 by the parking lot, he wasn't sure which of them had the boy. They wouldn't leave him alone, so there must be someone else working with them. He decided to dispose of the number 2 hero first. He's the biggest thorn on his side in this battle after all. In a burst of speed, All For One came crushing down the hero. The impact of the two leveled the parking lot with an eruption of flames and shock waves. When the dust settled, all the cars were now a pile of trash, and the windows of the hospital all collapsed. Give me the boy, and I'll exchange him for your life and everyone else's at the hospital. 𝗫𝐻𝐻 didn't reply. Instead, he made his flames stronger and took a defensive stance. All For One chuckled, amused. You're really choosing war over peace. So be it. He moved again, this time his fists covered in ice as a strength quirk propelled him with a single leap. 𝗫𝐻𝐻 met him in the middle with his own fists lit up in flames. Their collision negated each other's attack, resulting in them trading successive blows. A punch from the hero was rewarded with a kick from the villain. Reddish tendrils stabbed flesh, while burning flames charred skin. Even as their attacks were evenly matched, 𝗫𝐻𝐻 was the one that's significantly losing strength. All For One grinned. His minor healing quirks were taking effect, while the number 2 hero only had his stamina to rely on. The villain was slowly gaining advantage as 𝗫𝐻𝐻's attacks were becoming sloppy. He dodged a right hook coming his way, and delivered a punch to the gut. His initial attack was already strong due to it being coated with ice, but then he added an air cannon when the hit landed, causing the hero's body to be blown towards the nearest wall. Even with that, All For One knew better than to assume the deed was done. He let reddish-black tendrils appear on his arms yet again, ready to stab the hero and add his quirk to the collection. But before he could even step forwards, another bullet dug itself on his knee. He buckled and glared at the direction of the shot. From the sky, the girl was preparing another bullet, seemingly made out of her own hair. All For One blocked the next bullet with a 7-layer barrier, which would have otherwise rendered his other knee useless. He hasn't even thought of a plan to attack yet when another bullet came rushing for him. Pointless, he thought, seeing as it was literally aimed at the barrier he made. But then, the ammo curved its trajectory, completely ignoring the block that All For One had set. If he hadn't responded quickly, his head would have been the resting place of the projectile. At the last second, he was able to coat his head with a thick layer of diamonds, a quirk he got from a woman several years ago. He used a combination of active healing and quirk enhancement to repair his knee and push out the bullet from earlier. What an annoying quirk you have, little girl, he whispered to himself as he levitated again. His speed didn't allow for the flying duo to react fast enough before he was floating in front of them. The girl wasn't even fazed by him, but the blue-haired boy shifted into a fighting stance. All For One was amused to say the least. He couldn't take the threat seriously when these two youngsters were standing on a very fluffy cloud. Tell you what, you two seem promising, quirk and skill-wise. It would be a shame for you to be killed so early in your career. He smiled mockingly with his hands producing different quirks. Just give me Izuku Midoriya. I won't kill him, I assure you. And we won't give him. We assure you, 𝗫𝐻𝐻 replied mockingly. He doesn't even get to react before their cloud suddenly dropped as another large pillar of flame ravaged where he was. Izuku didn't know what to do. One moment he was happily playing with Sparkmight, and the next thing he knew, a villain attacked them. He hoped that 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐭 and 𝗵𝐻 would return safely. They ushered him to safety when the villain lost track of them, and now he was with Recovery Girl. He doesn't know why she was their backup of all people, but she's currently driving the car that Izuku was in. Where are we going? Don't worry, kid. Those friends of yours are tough. For now, we'll get you somewhere safe. Izuku didn't know what to say, so he just nodded and embraced 𝐴𝐴𝐻 tighter. They drove further and further away from 𝐼𝐻 until they reached a neighborhood. It looked fairly ordinary, which made the Greenette wonder why they were here in the first place. Were they meeting someone super special? But he didn't really ask. Their car parked in front of this traditional Japanese home. It really stood out in this modern-looking neighborhood. Recovery Girl hopped out of the vehicle and ushered Izuku to the house. Before they could enter, though, the door opened by itself and out came two boys. One with white hair, and the smaller one behind him had two hair colors. How is that possible? But that's not what concerned Izuku, though. The dual-haired boy, who he knew was about the same age as him, had a bandage wrapped around the left side of his head, covering his eye. He looked mistrusting of the new visitors, yet he didn't speak. "Are you the ones that our father told us to expect?" asked the white-haired boy. "Yes, we are, kiddo. This little guy here needs to rest." All for One clenched his jaw in frustration. He was already injured in multiple places, had burns across his body, and to top it all off, his regeneration quirks could not keep up with the damage. The girl with a sniper and that cloud boy were invaluable supports for 𝗵𝐻. He doesn't have enough firepower to overcome the joint defenses and attacks of the three heroes, especially since his quirk kept sending him warning signals. One for All is nearby, and so is its current wielder, All Might. He couldn't risk everything on this fight, especially since he doesn't know where they're hiding the brat. Nearby or not, that boy follows every order given to him, making it a difficult chase. With injuries this severe, it'll be a matter of time before they capture him. Just as he felt the rushing power of All Might coming towards him from the sky, he charged up a combination of quirks on his right arm. He grinned sadistically as 𝗵𝐻 prepared his own attack. "I'd suggest you not to do that." The damage dealt on the hospital parking lot was immense, but it was also contained. All for One didn't think that the number 2 hero would be competent enough to pull it off, but he managed. All for One waited for the perfect moment just as All Might was about to land and 𝗵𝐻 was about to attack. He then released his power onto the ground. The shockwave allowed the villain to propel himself into the air, while simultaneously letting the number 1 hero get hit by the convergence of energy. He easily dodged the bullet shot by that sniper girl with the speed he's going. A glance by the perimeter made All for One smile, and he attacked it with an air cannon. The heroes were too late to defend the few civilians there, which allowed for the villain to escape, while the heroes and police were left with the fallout of the attack. All for One soared through the skies with ecstasy. His injuries were starting to heal, and he knew which kind of quirks he should collect next. With more power behind his attacks, he could finally begin to take over the governments of the world, starting from the warp quirk that could allow him to be anywhere at any given moment. To be born with power must be a blessing from the heavens, but if that same power isn't given to the ones you love, then it becomes a curse. Thunder roared in the skies as a black car parked itself at the driveway of the Todoroki residence. 4 figures clad in black exited the vehicle, and only the occasional lightning bolts lit up the dark skyline of Tokyo. With the sky looking like this, it was an honest shock that a single drop of rain hadn't touched the ground yet. Mitsuki ruffled her son's hair and made an attempt to grab his hands, but they remained in Katsuki's pockets. She knew better than to force things on him, so she simply walked towards the unwelcoming dark brown door. Hitoshi looked up to his mom, who had a dark look on her face. She was staring at Katsuki as he walked with his mom. The purple-headed boy reached out his right hand to his mother's left one, and that was when she forced a smile. Atsuko whispered "let's go" as she took her son's hand and guided him to the house. Her and Hitoshi walked behind the blondes as Mitsuki knocked. The house was deathly silent inside. No sound of TV nor radio, almost as if no one's home. But after 3 beats, the door opened to the irritated face of 𝗵𝐻, which quickly morphed to softness when he realized who the visitors were. "You're Izuku's friends, right? The ones he call Kaken and Toshi. Only Zuko can call me that." A slap followed after. Katsuki held his cheek as he stared at his mom, whose hands were reddened. "Don't shout, Katsuki." The boy's comeback died at his throat with how his mom looked. "Sorry, come in," 𝗵𝐻 said as he opened the door wider. His intimidating demeanor was absent while he was in the comfort of his home. He still wore his dress shirt from earlier, and the flames that littered his body were currently extinguished. The 4 visitors stepped into the quiet house and put away their shoes. 𝗵𝐻 closed the door after taking a glance outside, and disappeared into the kitchen. No one occupied the living room, and only a few lights were turned on. Hitoshi felt a little uncomfortable with how unlived the home looked from both outside and inside. His normally passive face showed his dislike, which also mirrored Katsuki's. They sat down on the tatami flooring with a zabuton making them more comfortable. 𝗫𝐬 came back a moment later, carrying with him a tea set. No conversations were started as the head of the house poured his visitors tea. Small thank yous were muttered as they sipped on their cups. And that was when 𝗫𝐬 decided to speak. "I understand you're here for 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐻. He's in Shoto's room, that one," he said, glancing at what he meant. If one took a closer look, a faint green light could be seen emanating from the sliding paper doors. "He hasn't talked since last week, but he might talk to you." Hitoshi and Katsuki shared a glance before they stood up at the same time. They put down their cups and bowed in gratitude before walking towards the room where 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐻 was in. The two boys looked at each other, not knowing if they should call out first or just slide the door open. Whirring sounds escaped the walls and green sparks shined through the paper door. "Hey, 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐻, can we come in? Toshi's here with me." As expected, no reply came. Hitoshi slid the door slowly and stepped inside with the blonde. The first thing they noticed was that the lights were not turned on, only the green swirls lit up the room. 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐻 was kneeling faced away from them. Beside him was a tear-stained 𝐬𝗏𝗏 lying face down on the tatami floor. The greenette was still dressed in the black suit that he wore earlier, just like the two boys. "𝐬𝐻𝐻," Hitoshi spoke and approached his friend cautiously, careful to avoid every swirl of energy that came his way. He knelt down beside the greenette and looked at his face. 𝐬𝐻𝐻𝐻 was staring blankly at the wall. Only his blinking eyes and twitching fingers gave evidence that he was conscious. Hitoshi stared at Katsuki and urged him to sit on the other side of 𝐬𝐻𝐻. The blonde did just that and also called out to the greenette. "𝐬𝐻𝐻, we missed you, you know. The last time we saw you was before you registered your quirk. That was really, really long ago." Still, no reply came. Hitoshi and Katsuki didn't want to leave, so they simply decided to keep their friend company. Silence felt loud enough for them, as they sat there together in the dark, basked in the green glow of 𝐬𝐻𝐻's quirk. Meanwhile, Mitsuki and Atsuko sat at the living room, sipping their tea as they arranged their thoughts. 𝗫𝐬 didn't mind. He also remained quiet while drinking his tea. Eventually, the blonde woman spoke. "Will 𝐬𝐻𝐻 stay with you from now on? I thought 𝐸 had jurisdiction over him." "No, he won't. This is a temporary arrangement until the commission finally decide on the best action." "I see," said Atsuko. "But I must ask, why here? Isn't it safer to put 𝐬𝐻𝐻 in UA as he's constantly surrounded by pro-heroes?" 𝗫𝐬 finished his tea and set down the cup before replying. "The Chimera believes that UA is compromised. The only ones that should have known about the boy's appointment with iMedicals are the few people in UA, the commission heads, and All Might and I, and even fewer people knew that there was a change in schedule. Apart from that, it is obvious that if the commission and UA want 𝐬𝐻𝐻 to be safe, they'd put him in either institution. But putting 𝐬𝐻𝐻 with me," he paused looking at the room where the boy was, "would be hiding him in plain sight. No one would expect him to be living with the number 2 hero." "That's reasonable, I guess," Mitsuki whispered. "So, you're the only guard he has right now?" 𝗫𝐬 nodded. "I'm more than enough to guard him, but underground heroes are stationed around the general area, and Nagant stays in the attic to keep a watchful eye." The women remained silent after that, not really knowing what else to say. 𝗫𝐬 narrowed his eyes at them. "Are you not going to visit the boy? He needs his loved ones to be with him." I don't know if I can. He has so much of 𝐀𝐻 in him, and I just can't handle that right now," Mitsuki said, tears pouring from her eyes and her voice wavering. "I don't know why or how it came to this. 𝐬𝐻𝐻's just a kid. And 𝐀𝐻, oh, she has so much of her life ahead of her." Atsuko comforted the blonde by hugging her, while 𝗫𝐬 looked at his clothed wrist, hiding the ugly injury he got from All for One. They lost that day, evident by the pile of corpses left behind at the wake of their battle. The only reprieve was 𝐬𝐻𝐻's safety and thus All for One's lack of a warp quirk. Even if you can't do it, you should still be by his side. You're the ones closest to him. A sigh escaped Mitsuki's lips. I know that. Let's go, Atsuko-san." The purple head nodded and walked after her, 𝗫𝐬 trailing behind them. Mitsuki slid the door open, her eyes landing on the 3 boys silently sitting together. She felt a shiver creep up her spine at the green glow that illuminated the room. The only sound were the whirring swirls of energy that stem out from 𝐬𝐻𝐻. "𝐬𝐻-kun, it's Auntie Mitsuki," she began, catching the attention of Katsuki and Hitoshi. "Can we turn on the lights? It's so dark here," she added. Since the greenette didn't really reply, 𝗫𝐬 turned the lights on. 𝐬𝐻𝐻 flinched at the sudden brightness, but nothing more. Mitsuki sighed and walked closer to the boy. She crouched down to gently put her hand on his shoulder. "It'll be alright." She didn't even get to finish the sentence as a violent wave of green energy rushed out of 𝐬𝐻𝐻. Everyone in the room flinched away, but the greenette was calm again in an instant. Parts of the tatami floors, the walls, and the ceiling were chipped away, and the light bulb was gone, most likely teleported somewhere on Earth. Heavy breaths filled the room as Mitsuki and Atsuko assessed their sons for any injury, but all of them were unharmed. At closer inspection, 𝗫𝐬 realized the pattern of destruction that 𝐬𝐻𝐻's quirk made. The energy deliberately avoided all the living things inside the room, and only affected the surroundings. Such precise control over his quirk even at a young age, and troubled mind. Or perhaps his quirk was heavily influenced by his sentiments. 𝗫𝐬 had no way to confirm. I'm sorry for startling you, 𝐬𝐻𝐬-kun. If you don't want to talk right now, I guess we could return later, Mitsuki said in a caring tone of a mother. She crouched down beside the boy and offered him a smile. Just remember that we're all here for you, okay? Don't hesitate to ask for us. Again, Izuku gave no reply. The 4 visitors went on their way afterwards, never even having the opportunity to meet the other members of the Todoroki family. 𝗫𝐬 closed the front door with a frown and went to Fayumi's room upstairs. He slid the door open after informing his daughter of his presence, and was mildly surprised to see that all his children were inside. I see you're all here, he said, looking at them. Natsuo was playing with Fayumi's phone, while Shoto was playing with hero figurines. The visitors just left and I have an important virtual meeting to attend. Fayumi, take care of your brothers, and check up on Izuku-kun once in a while. Did he finally talk? Shoto asked from the bed, sitting beside his sister. 𝗫𝐬 shook his head. Don't disturb me in my room and don't let anyone in. We're not expecting any more visitors. When they all nodded in understanding, he left the room and locked himself in his private study. He closed the curtains, turned his laptop on, and went in the private feed that Nezu set up. It has been a week since 𝗫𝐬 fought all for one in Tokyo. It has also been a week since 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐴 apparently got into a car accident after a truck driver's brakes didn't work. The boy didn't know that this happened, as he happily settled and played with the Todoroki children. They were cool playmates, and they also thought Izuku was a pretty cool kid to hang with. None of them were worried about the state of affairs that were currently happening at the heart of Tokyo, and they were right not to worry. 𝗫𝐬 went home at about 6 p.m., and he wasn't gravely injured. The same couldn't be said with 𝐀𝐦 though, as she was already pronounced dead on arrival at a hospital. The Todoroki household received a call that night, just as they were dialing 𝐀𝐦's number to tell her that Izuku was safe. On the other end of the line, a nurse narrates how she was found in the scene of the crash. The paramedics tried everything they can. From then on, no one's heard the voice of Izuku even as his mother was cremated and her bones buried. Only the constant swirl of green energy around him indicated any sense of consciousness, considering that the swirls haven't gotten out of control even once. But Nezu thought it was an exaggeration. Izuku probably spoke within the week, just not in the presence of others. Or perhaps he even shouted or screamed once. It doesn't matter either way, since the boy also didn't speak during the funeral, which saddened Izuku's loved ones. The burial had just happened a few hours earlier. There were few visitors, but every one of them were VIPs in their own accord. Nezu decided to stay behind even as Izuku already went back to 𝗫𝐬's house. It's been a week since the accident that cost 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐴 her life. Her official death certificate said it was due to a car accident where a truck with broken brakes crashed into her. But that's not what happened at all. Only Nezu, 𝗫𝐬, All Might, and the officials of the commission actually knew the true story. And it was a secret they intend to carry for as long as they lived. Principal, All Might's voice lacked its usually hopeful tinge. Should we get going? We do have a meeting later, right? Nezu nodded and took one last look at the newly put gravestone. Yes, I suppose we should go. Can you start the car, All Might? I need a moment. He didn't wait for a reply or any indication of compliance as he walked towards 𝐀𝐦's grave. They didn't know each other long, or had any real connection as a close friend. But Nezu would do everything in his power to honor her will, protect my son and his friends, help them achieve their dreams. The principal, who considered himself quite stoic and unfeeling, shed a tear in memory of 𝐀𝐦's love for her child. Even in her dying breath, he's the one she thought about. Human affection truly is fascinating. He came back to the car after that, with All Might driving off immediately. Nezu sat on the front seat and hummed along at the song played by the radio. The principal was chipper for someone who had just attended the funeral, thought All Might. So, principal, is the meeting about Izuku-kun? Indeed it is, he said. Has David talked to you at all these past few days? David, as in David Shield? All Might asked dumbly as he looked back and forth at Nezu in the road. No, he hasn't. He told me he was busy with something, even though his evaluation of iMedical's Tokyo ended about a week ago. Ah yes, he was doing the commission and I a favor regarding Izuku-kun. The hero averted his gaze from the road for a second. He was. What about Izuku-kun? The commission believes that it's no longer safe for him to stay in Japan. All for One has too much influence in the underground. So, we arrived at a solution. Izuku-kun will be in 𝐼-Island's custody, and will only return here once he's the right age to attend UA as a student. What? Steady now, All Might. We don't want to crash the car, teased Nezu when the hero suddenly swerved too far left. I was actually the one that proposed the idea. You already know how secured 𝐼-Island is, with it constantly moving and all. I'm also certain that if Izuku stays there, All for One will pursue him no longer. How are you sure of that? Nezu grinned. Even though he has powerful quirks and allies on his side, he's smart enough to know that he couldn't wage war against the world in his current state. 𝐼-Island is home to the most prestigious scientists. and their creations which are funded by the world's governments. The United Nations would retaliate if All for One chooses to directly attack the island. Not to mention, the principal looked out the window, a frown forming in his face as an old car pumped out smoke like a fog machine. S.H.I.E.L.D. thought that Izuku's quirk could have the potential to solve many of the world's problems. All Might's eyes widened. Dave really said that? He did, and it'll be one of the factors to appeal with the Island Council. Will you be including Izuku's aunts and uncles in the meeting? The Bakugas and Shinzas? I'm afraid not, Nedzu said as he wiggled in his seat. They still have a lot on their plate considering 𝐀𝐦 passing and Izuku's well-being. I intend to tell them once Island approves of the arrangement. Shoto had mixed feelings with regards to the Greenette in their house. The first time they met, the boy was very enthusiastic in meeting him, especially the part where they showed each other their quirks. Shoto was amazed at how Izuku-kun's quirk functioned. He's never seen anything like it. Izuku-kun was also at awe with Shoto's quirk, the power to create ice with his right hand. The boy, despite his obvious curiosity, didn't even ask about the bandage wrapped around Shoto's head. They just played with their powers like normal kids. And when Shoto was starting to get tired, they played with toys. Izuku-kun even introduced 𝗵𝗃 to him, which Shoto thought to be very cute. Together, they waited for Dad to return, and he did, without life-threatening injuries too. But then, after their dinner, everything became dull. They received a call from the hospital, the very same call that started Izuku-kun's depressed state. That night, Shoto slept in Natsuo's room since Dad told him Izuku-kun's quirk might go haywire anytime. It didn't happen though. The next day, after Dad and Izuku-kun returned from another trip, the Greenette had a constant swirl of green energy surrounding him at all times. Shoto tried sneaking a peek every now and then to see if it disappeared along with the boy's sadness, but it didn't. Dad told them to leave Izuku-kun alone for some time. He just needed to process things. After a couple days of leaving him alone, the Greenette still hasn't spoken, which was beginning to damper everyone else's mood too. Today, Dad told them that Izuku-kun's friends were coming over. Shoto thought that he would finally speak to them. But alas, that did not happen. Instead, he entered his room, which now has missing parts and a broken bulb. The boy made sure to make his footsteps audible and soft at the same time, as to not startle the Greenette. Hey, Izuku-kun. And 𝗵𝗃. He spoke and sat down beside him. You don't want to speak, 'cause you're sad, right? He whispered in a soft tone. I also get sad sometimes, but the saddest I've ever been was when 𝗬𝐻𝐬 Shoto hugged his knees to his chest when he felt his eyes getting wet. When 𝗬𝐻𝐬 passed away too. The statement caused Izuku to look at the bandaged boy, the first time he's ever responded with anyone. It was because of a fire. Our house was burned, so Dad took us here. Izuku tried, but his voice was scratchy and hoarse from disuse. The Greenette clenched his fist in frustration, but he gestured to his face to relay the message. Shoto understood what he meant, asking whether it was where he got his injury. But he gave no reply. He just stared at the face of the boy, illuminated by the green swirls that hover around him. His eyes glowed green, and the shadows created by the uneven lighting condition made Izuku look more mature. Shoto looked away from the Greenette's gaze. I know it's sad to lose someone, but Natsuo Nyai-san said that we shouldn't be sad for very long. Izuku didn't say anything, so the boy went on. He said, while we're frowning here on Earth, your mom and 𝗬𝐻𝐬 Nyai-san are having their adventures in an ice sky world. We should smile up to them, so they know that we're also having fun here. That way, we can all be happy, he smiled, looking back at the Greenette. So you also watch ice sky anime? Izuku's voice was still scratchy, but he had a smile now. I like to read manga more than watch anime. Natsuo and 𝗬𝐻𝐬 Nyai-san said they're better 'cause it's the original. Izuku nodded. I still like anime 'cause they're colorful and flashy. Oh, by the way, Dad said to give you this. Shoto mumbled and slid a box across the tatami flooring. Because of the dark lighting, Izuku didn't recognize what it was. But when he grabbed it, causing the green swirls to illuminate the object, the boy gasped like an ecstatic fanboy. The latest limited edition 𝗫𝗫 action figure. 𝗫𝗫𝗫 really kept his promise. Yeah, you want to play with it. It's so dark here though, so we should transfer to the living room. Izuku nodded. Oh, and I also have the latest limited edition All Might figure. I'll get it. The Greenette trailed behind the dual-haired boy as they went upstairs to get Shoto's toys that were transferred to Natsuo's room. For the first time ever, Izuku's heart and mind was at ease. He gripped 𝗵𝗃 closer to him, as well as the 𝗫𝗫𝗫 figure. Shoto-kun was right. Mom was in a better place now, but it still doesn't change the fact that he misses her so much. Even so, he'd allow himself to enjoy, even for just a little while. It's been 2 days since the funeral, and Oboro hasn't seen Izuku yet. Principal Nedzu had just briefed them about the new plan for Izuku's safety. He's gotta admit, Island did not come to mind when thinking of a safe place, and letting the boy stay there made Oboro slightly bitter. He knew they're doing it for Izuku's well-being, but he'll miss his little cloudlet. Hero job was more fun when he told stories to his kuhai. Hey, 𝗏𝗏, what's with the dumb face? The blue head shoved the blonde playfully. 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗍𝐵, I'm just worried for the little 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 is all. Huh, 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗍𝗏, I like that. Sounds like something I can apply a trademark for. 𝐲𝐻𝐬 hummed behind them. You better now use that every time 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗍𝗏𝗏. Come on. The trio were currently on their way to 𝗣𝗲𝗬𝗪𝗛 to fetch their kids. 𝗫𝐷evor's assistant called yesterday, saying that it might be a good idea to let 𝐬𝐻𝐸 have fun with his friends before he officially moves to Island. 𝗏𝗏 readily agreed, and convincing 𝐬𝐻 and 𝐍𝐴𝐭 weren't hard either. He wanted to invite Tensei and Nimiri too, but it might be stressful for 𝐬𝐻𝐸 to be around so many people at once. 𝗏𝗏 had half a mind to simply ride on a cloud and race towards the ice cream parlor, but 𝐬𝐻 definitely won't allow that. He did walk faster than usual though, and then even faster to set the pace for the three of them. As skilled heroes, they expertly dodged people that walked with them on the sidewalk. When they saw the sign of the parlor, a blue bunny holding a strawberry ice cream cone with the words Dairy Dewdrops, the start of a chaotic race began. No quirks allowed, just pure physical ability. Unsurprisingly, Aizawa was the reluctant winner again, what with his flexibility and intense physical training to hone his body. How are you so fast? 𝐍𝐴𝐭 heaved on the side of the entrance while 𝗏𝗏 tried to catch his own breath. Aizawa rolled his eyes. How are you so dumb as to keep challenging us even though you're always last? The raven head wasn't even out of breath with his arms crossed. Hey guys, how have you been? Mrs. Shinsu greeted as she stepped out of the counter. We've been fine, Shinsu-san. Are they here yet? 𝗏𝗏 replied. Oh please, I told you to call me Aunt Tsuko. The kids are in the employees' lounge, but Izuku hasn't arrived yet. I'll take you to them. The three friends nodded and followed the purple head. She opened the door to a small, yet cozy-looking lounge where the sleeping forms of Hitoshi and Katsuki could be seen from the couch. I knew Hitoshi was so excited to play with Izuku again that he couldn't sleep last night. But to think that even Katsuki-kun, Atsuko hummed in thought. Well, they haven't seen the little cloudlet for so long. It's understandable. Actually, have you told them yet about Island? 𝗏𝗏 whispered as he sat on a stool across from the couch. Atsuko sighed. No, Katsuki-kun's parents also haven't told him yet. We're still looking for the right moment to tell the news. Perhaps tomorrow, right after their bonding with Izuku. That might sour their memory of this day. Instead of associating it with fun, they might think of it as the last time they're seeing their friend. Aizawa reasoned from the wall by the door where he was leaning on. That makes sense, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 agreed, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside 𝗏𝗏. So when should we tell them? Does Izuku already know of this? 𝗏𝗏 scratched his neck sheepishly. I don't know if I'm allowed to share this, but Principal Netsu said that Izuku was the first one to know about it. Everyone looked at the blue head in surprise. 𝗏𝗏's loud yell was fortunately stopped by Aizawa just in time. The raven head's eyes were glowing red with his hair defying gravity, his iconic scarf tightly wrapped against the blonde's mouth. Zip it, 𝐍𝐴𝐭. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 frantically nodded and Aizawa released him. Please explain, 𝗏𝗏. 𝐍𝐴𝐭 might do something he'll regret. 𝗏𝗏 chuckled at Aizawa's attempt at intimidation while Atsuko smiled fondly. Okay, the thing was, the principal talked with the little cloudlet on the hospital. Like the understanding chimera that he is, he confronted the kid alone and told him his idea. He said that Izuku was silent for the whole conversation. But then apparently he voiced his agreement before going back to Endeavor. I don't know if I believe that or not, Aizawa muttered. 𝗏𝗏 simply shrugged. Suddenly, the door to the lounge opened again. In came the employee that was left at the counter. He had a nervous face and cold sweat running from his forehead. Shinsu-san, Endeavor's here. He's looking for you, saying he's with Midoriya-kun. They looked at each other, but before any of them could reply, two small blurs passed by them shouting in unison. Zuku's here. Looks like they have good hearing. An extremely better reaction time than us, 𝐬𝐻𝐸 remarked. The four went out of the lounge and was blessed with the wholesome sight of Hitoshi and Katsuki hugging a tearful Izuku. They were at the usual table where they always hung out, and Endeavor was a lingering presence near them. Thankfully, there were no customers in the parlor yet as it was still quite early. Otherwise people would be flocking their table to get an autograph from the number 2 hero. In a closer look, 𝗏𝗏 could see that it wasn't just Izuku that's crying. Even Hitoshi and Katsuki had a few tears streaming down their face. We missed you so much, Zuku. Why'd it took so long to meet us like this? The small blonde demanded in a harsh tone that sounded more like a whine. A few more moments, and the three boys untangled themselves from each other. Now 𝗏𝗏 had a clear look to see if whether or not these three wore venue-appropriate clothes. Hitoshi was wearing a purple overalls with a white shirt. Katsuki wore his favorite black shirt with a skull print and cargo shorts. And the little cloudlet was dressed in a blue shirt with an orange collar paired with blue shorts and his signature red shoes. The boy's eyes were still slightly glowing green, signifying he's still upset. 𝗏𝗏's heart swelled when he saw that the loud cloud pin he gave to Izuku was pinned to his left chest. and its counterpart was also pinned on 𝗵𝗃, which he was holding in his left hand. 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐼 and 𝐻𝐡𝐢 kept on gushing about what they did these past weeks while the 𝗏𝐻𝐬 just happily listened. 𝗵𝗃, 𝗧𝗏𝐻𝐸, and 𝐈𝐲 lingered near them, still unnoticed by the three. 𝗓𝗏𝗏 nodded at them in acknowledgement, and they did the same. It took the 𝗏𝐻𝐬 a moment to notice the blue-headed teen standing near him. 𝗵𝗃 waved. "And 𝐁𝐸-chan," he whispered and hugged the teen's legs. "I really missed 𝐁𝐸-chan." "I missed you too, little cloudlet," 𝗵𝗃 replied, ruffling the boy's hair a bit. "How have you been?" 𝐬𝐡𝐢 detached himself from 𝗵𝗃's legs and looked up at him with slight excitement. "I got that limited edition Endeavor figure I wanted. Oh, and I made a new friend," he piped up as if he just remembered, and ran towards the number 2 hero that were standing near them. 𝐬𝐡𝐢 disappeared behind the man's large figure, and reappeared a moment later with another boy in tow. "Everyone, this is Shoto-kun. His dad is Endeavor-san and he has a really cool quirk." Even though the 𝗏𝐻𝐬 was trying to be cheerful, everyone could notice how forced it seemed. But on the bright side, his eyes were now completely normal, no more glowing. "Whoa, you have a badass scar." A gray blur snatched 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐼 towards an unfazed 𝗳𝗏. The blonde kid's mouth was wrapped with the teen's capture weapon, and the raven head took it upon himself to not make the situation awkward. "Nice to meet you, Shoto-kun. I'm afraid 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐼's mouth needs some restriction at the moment." The boy nodded, becoming conscious of the scar on his left eye. The bandage for the injury was just removed last night, so Shoto wasn't used to people staring at it. "With that settled, I leave my son and 𝐬𝐡𝐢 to you. Take care of them in my stead." "Wait, you're leaving? Doesn't 𝐬𝐡𝐢 still need guards at all times?" 𝐬𝐡𝐢 asked beside 𝗳𝗏. Endeavor huffed. "I know that, which is why you'll be constantly tailed by sidekicks I personally trained, as well as Lady Nagin. You just need to have fun and stick to protocol in case of an emergency," he said, and walked out of the parlor without waiting for a reply. When the flame hero rode away in his car, 𝗳𝗏 released 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐼 from his hold. "What the hell? What do that for?" he yelled in frustration. "You were being impolite to your new friend." "We're not friends. He doesn't even know me yet." "You're cackin' right," Shoto asked timidly. "Huh, call me that again and see what happens, Peppermint." 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐼's threat made 𝗬𝐡𝐢 snort and giggle for the first time. Shoto looked shocked and the three teens looked relieved. "What's so funny, nerd? Shoto-kun does look like a peppermint," he smiled and muzzled 𝗵𝗃. "When I first saw his red and white hair, I thought he looked more like a pokeball." His observation earned laughs from everyone else. When 𝗬𝐡𝐢 looked at Shoto, even he was laughing and had a soft look on his face. The 7 boys, 3 teens and 4 kids, decided to visit the newly opened amusement park at the outskirts of Musutafu. None of the kids have ridden carnival rides before, so their first time would be with each other. All 4 weren't able to hide their excitement as they alternately picked rides to go to. Even 𝗬𝐡𝐢 was smiling happily. Their first choice, which 𝗬𝐡𝐢 picked, was the giant Ferris wheel that looked to be the main attraction of the park. Normally, only 6 people should fit in one car, but when the group paid the employee with Endeavor's black card, he allowed all 7 of them to ride at once. Turns out, Endeavor gave his card to Shoto so that he could buy whatever he wanted for himself or for 𝗬𝐡𝐢. The 3 teens felt guilty using the number 2 hero's card, but Shoto insisted. They even called the hero just to make sure, and he said it was fine as long as the kids have fun and cheer up 𝗬𝐡𝐢. 𝗵𝗃 thought he was a mean-spirited guy, but he was actually pretty cool. 𝗬𝐡𝐢 clung to the blue head's side for the entire duration of the ride, with him holding Shoto in his other hand and 𝗵𝗃 sitting on his lap. Next stop was Shoto's choice, a paddle boat shaped to be different marine animals. 𝗬𝐡𝐢 and Shoto rode with 𝗵𝗃, 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐼 with 𝗧𝗏𝐻𝐸, and 𝗬𝗏𝐻𝐸 with 𝗳𝗏. The peaceful ride was turned into a contest when 𝗬𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐼 boasted how they were the fastest paddlers, which made 𝗬𝗏𝗍𝐸 protest. In the end, it was the 3-man team that won, despite only Shoto and 𝗵𝗃 paddling since it was only intended for 2 people. After that, they ate lunch at a diner inside the park. 𝗬𝐡𝐢 still hadn't talked much, even though 𝗵𝗃 could see that he was enjoying. When the menu was handed to the 𝗏𝐻𝐬, he absent-mindedly flipped it again and again, saying that he had no appetite. He really wanted his little cloudlet to start being himself again, and the only way to do it was through 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐴. But the menu didn't include it, so 𝗵𝗃 went to the kitchen and tried to cook it himself. With the ingredients available in the diner, he was able to pull off a decent 𝗏𝐻𝐬 that made 𝗬𝐡𝐢 cry happy tears. When lunch was over, 𝗬𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐼 proposed to ride the roller coaster next, but since there was a height limit, it was a no-go. So, he settled for the next best thing, an attraction where he can beat everyone else's asses. Bumper cars. And he was actually pretty good. The only one that beat his ruthlessness was 𝗳𝗏. The raven-headed teen drove his bumper car like an expert, face impassive the whole time as he cornered every single one of them. The last ride they went to was the horror train, courtesy of Hitoshi. Thankfully, the ride wasn't really scary, but it was still horror-themed. 𝗬𝐡𝐢 sat beside Shoto while 𝗵𝗃 sat behind them. Akatsuki wasn't scared at all. He even insulted one of the actors that he was too childish to be scary. Hitoshi was quiet the whole time, and Hisashi was easily startled. Aizawa sat behind him luckily, which allowed the Raven Head to cancel out their friend's quirk every time he yells in surprise. Izuku was scared, evident from the whimpers Oboro could hear, but Shoto reassured him every time. When they were all done with the rides they wanted, the 7 boys went home satisfied, except for Izuku. When he returned to their suite in UA, Oboro helped him pack all his things. It was official, he'd leave Japan and fly to Island tomorrow. The blue head frowned as he watched the greenette shove all his stuff into boxes and bags. That night, Oboro slept beside Izuku, hugging him close as the boy cried himself to sleep. The next day, Nezu and the commission were busy facilitating a safe route and decoy planes for Izuku's departure. Needless to say, the Hero Public Safety Commission spent a lot of money to guarantee the greenette's safety. Even so, they were not holding back on the expenses, quite certain their investment on the boy would pay off in the future. Meanwhile, Oboro was doing his best to entertain Izuku. They played board games, but Izuku just complied out of obedience and clearly didn't have fun. They watched some of Izuku's favorite movies, but even that wasn't enough to cheer him up. The only upside was that there were no traces of the green swirls or glowing eyes from Izuku, which means he still relaxed despite not being chipper. Eventually, nightfall arrived and they were on their way to the Public Safety Commission's private airport in Musutafu. The greenette was treated like a president of a nation. Multiple heroes were disguised as civilians and employees all around the airport, and Oboro and Izuku were guided by a delegate from Island. All their stuff, apart from 𝐴𝐴 that Izuku won't let go, were taken by employees to be put in the jet. They didn't even need to be scanned or undergo any other normal procedure. They went straight to their designated gate where a sleek private jet greeted them along with Nezu and David Shield. "Good evening, Izuku-kun, Shirakumo-kun. I trust you had a comfortable trip going here," Nezu asked as he walked beside them. "It was surprisingly comfy. Even though we were driven here by a secret service and followed by several pro-heroes," Oboro grinned. The principal chuckled heartily. "So, you noticed them following you, huh? Perhaps they should train harder when it comes to tailing someone. How many people are going with Izuku?" "Only Professor Shield and I. The delegate will also ride the jet with us." Along with Shield's explanation was interrupted by a female voice. You won't leave me behind. Izuku-kun is my mission after all." Nagant smiled as she caught up to them. Izuku's eyes widened. "Nagant-chan, you're coming too." "Of course, Green Bean," she said, ruffling his hair. "I'll miss you otherwise." The 5 passengers, Izuku, Oboro, David, Nagant, and the delegate boarded the jet as Nezu and other employees watched them carefully. A flight stewardess showed them their seats and urged them to wear seatbelts. The jet needed to depart immediately so that they could get to safety as soon as possible. Oboro glanced at the greenette sitting on his right, brooding as he stared out the window with 𝐴𝐴 buried in his arms. Even though it was Oboro's first time flying, and on a private jet on top of that, he couldn't find it in himself to feel giddy when Izuku wasn't. The boy's usual self would gush at how awesome the jet was, or how cool it would be to fly up in the air for the first time. Maybe the little cloudlet would feel better once they arrived in Island. There surely are logic-defying inventions there that would entertain Izuku. "Please make sure your seatbelts are secure. We will depart." A flicker in the jet's electricity cut the feed and a thundering boom resounded from the skies. Oboro looked out the window, only for his gaze to focus on the greenette whose body is surrounded by thick aura of green energy. "Little cloudlet." The boy didn't respond, but a void orb was forming in his right hand. Before Oboro could realize what's happening, Izuku closed his fist. The only thing left was 𝐴𝐴 that dropped down when the boy disappeared. Oboro watched in horror as Izuku warped atop the jet's right wing. A pillar of flame was heading straight to where the boy stood unrelenting. "Izuku, move." His warning didn't reach Izuku's ears as the boy outstretched his right arm. "What's he doing out there?" Nagant yelled, unfastening her seatbelt. "I don't know. He's stopping the attack." David gasped in disbelief. What? They both asked in unison. "Look." Just then, Izuku threw the void orb that formed on his right hand. It expanded into a large portal that redirected the blast of flame back to where it came from. A figure flying in top speed headed for their jet. The boy's attack caused an explosion midair, which seemed to satisfy the greenette as he teleported back inside the jet. Oboro, who was now standing, caught Izuku as he went limp right after warping. "Hey little cloudlet, I've got you." David, Nagant, and the delegate crowded the unconscious boy. "He's stable, just knocked out either from stress or exhaustion," Oboro reassured with a relieved sigh. "Fly the jet." "Now," Nagant commanded the stunned stewardess, who in turn told the pilots. Their vehicle finally started to move to gain momentum for the flight. Outside the window, Oboro spotted the figure that Izuku blasted, floating in the air. His fist tightened in rage thinking about everything that his boy went through. And it seems like it wasn't over. The figure flew straight to the jet once again, speed slightly faster than before. Shit, that's all for one right there. What do we do? All we can do is hope that All Might can defeat him. 𝐻𝐸 trailed off. Outside the window, a figure wearing blue sprung out from the terminal gate and intercepted All for One before he could reach the moving jet. Several blows were traded as the ground shook from the sheer amount of power. Eventually, their jet took off, moving away from the violent fight that was starting to destroy the airport runway. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 was grateful that the pilots were skilled enough to make the descent as smooth as possible. He didn't even get tilted from where he sat on the floor with 𝐬𝐻𝐸 in his arms. 𝐻𝐸 helped him stand up and settle 𝐬𝐻𝐸 on his seat. Should be clear skies here on out, right? He sighed. I hope so. They were both gravely mistaken. A surge of air cannon from below barely grazed the jet, causing it to topple slightly. What's going on down there? The island delegate asked in panic. They ignored him. I should help All Might. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 suddenly piped up. What are you talking about? All Might can't fly, but All for One can. If that damned villain avoids any fighting and heads straight here, we'll have no chance. Then how can you help? 𝐻𝐸 said in a dangerously low voice. I can fly, and my clouds can serve as foothold for All Might. The girl's eyes widened in realization. He's right. You better come back alive. 𝐬𝐻𝐸-kun wouldn't be able to handle any more losses. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 huffed. I won't leave him for the world. If you're sure of what you're doing. David sighed. 𝐻𝐸, put your seatbelt and sit beside 𝐬𝐻𝐸. You, don't say another word and sit down, he said as he also took a seat in front of 𝐬𝐻𝐸 and 𝐻𝐸. Sure, 𝐂𝐸-kun, open the hatch when you're ready. Miss, David called to the stewardess. Tell the pilot to close the door on my signal. Luckily, they brought their most advanced jet where the cockpit had access to everything within the vehicle. The blue-headed teen took a few breaths to steady himself. He needed to do this. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 was too important to lose, not just for the government, but mostly for him. He finally had the little brother that he always wanted. Someone who'd look up to him, someone he'd protect, and someone to cherish when the world becomes too cruel to live in. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 smiled, looking at how peaceful 𝐬𝐻𝐸 looked while sleeping, despite all the chaos around. He took off his brown jacket and sprawled it to the greenette's sleeping form. If, please, take care of the little cloudlet for me. 𝐻𝐸 nodded, as well as David. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 took one final breath before he opened the hatch, and jumped out without hesitation. A cloud formed beneath him, serving as a flying surfboard. The door was already closed when he looked again, so he didn't miss a beat as he surged through the wind to aid the #1 hero. A few hundred meters below the jet, 𝗂𝐻𝐻 could see All Might and All for One duking it out in the skies. Whilst the villain used a variety of quirks to stay afloat, the hero used powerful claps to create shockwaves that propel him towards the devil incarnate. The blue head was at awe at the level of control All Might has over his quirk, but he still looked like he's losing. He sped up his cloud and created multiple cloud platforms around the battling monsters. All Might used these as stepping stones. The two looked at him for a moment, before the hero delivered a particularly heavy blow to All for One. He then allowed himself to fall onto one of the cloud platforms created by 𝗂𝐻𝐻. All Might didn't give the villain time to recover as he jumped away from the cloud, destroying it in the process. His punch hit the All for One square on the stomach. Before he could recover, All Might stepped onto another platform and launched another punch. His stream of attacks was stopped when the villain released a shockwave around him. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 would have been blown away if he hadn't surfed away from where he was. He recreated the destroyed cloud platforms and surfed around the fighting figures to provide support. With his clouds, he was able to dampen attacks directed at All Might and temporarily blind All for One for a couple times. But the villain was getting impatient, and he finally released an attack not meant to harm, but to draw attention away from him. Several black balls shot out of the villain's hands, which all exploded simultaneously. When the dust settled, All for One was already surging towards the jet. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 didn't waste any time as he surfed with his cloud. All Might closely behind, also on a cloud. Loud cloud, the hero yelled when he was close enough. Create a cloud right above the jet, and get inside. I'll push us both back to the ground. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 nodded and prepared his quirk. Meanwhile, reddish-black tendrils pierced the side of the jet, causing a rush of air to disorient everyone on board. Shit, 𝐻𝐸 cursed as she unfastened her seatbelt and used her quirk to shoot down the 3 tendrils that connected. All for One quickly retracted them after getting shot. What now? Put these on the holes, David instructed and handed her 3 purple balls. She complied immediately without questions asked. Since the holes were relatively small, each ball covered the damage completely and merged with the walls of the jet. What are those? 𝐻𝐸 said suspiciously and sat down beside 𝐬𝐻𝐸 again. Emergency sealants. I see, the girl mumbled as she looked out the window to assess the situation. All for One was hot on their trail, and a few feet below him were 𝗔𝗫𝐿 and All Might. There was no need to worry. But then, All Might jumped off the cloud and surpassed the jet's altitude, only to come rushing down again and took the villain with him. The force of his jump caused a turbulence that awakened 𝐬𝐻𝐸. A whimper escaped the boy's lips and 𝐻𝐸 was by his side immediately. "Izuku, are you all right?" Instead of a reply, he opened his eyes, and the girl felt chills run across her spine. His eyes were completely green and glowing. Swirls of green energy danced beneath his skin before shooting out in random directions. Everyone ducked away from the boy's quirk, only to realize that the jet was beginning to emit energy surges. "What's happening?" 𝐬𝐬 said. "He's supercharging the jet with radiation," David informed from the floor, frantic and amazed. "And what does that mean?" There was a beat of silence before the professor looked at her with a serious expression. "It means he's prepping the jet to be teleported." 𝐬𝐬's eyes widened. She spared a glance at the boy with green energy spewing out of him chaotically, and ran towards the nearest window to look for 𝗧𝗏𝗏. From the outside, 𝗵𝗃 had no idea of what's happening. But when he got closer and closer to the jet, he began to notice that green sparks were littered all across the vehicle. 𝐬𝐬's face suddenly appeared on one of the windows, frantically signaling something. He didn't understand what she's saying, of course. He needed her to open the jet first before they could talk. But she was quite insistent on her gesturing. And with a closer look, he realized she was telling him to get closer. "Like this?" He asked no one in particular as he pushed the limits of his quirk to get closer and closer to the jet. 𝐬𝐬 nodded at what he was doing. He was only inches away from touching the jet when a surge of green rushed out of the vehicle, warping everything it touched. From the ground below, Nezu was in panic. He called the commission for aerial support, but the closest fighter jets and flying heroes would take about 30 minutes. The situation was bad, yet they had no choice but to wait for reinforcements. All Might couldn't fly. And it's not like Lady 𝐬𝐬 and Loud Cloud could attack from inside of the plane. It was not armed after all. But then, several minutes later, an alien thunderous roar ruptured the heavens and lit up the dark sky with green. Nezu immediately contacted the control tower about what happened on the jet. Apparently, they lost all connection to the flight when the green glow appeared on the sky. He was already thinking of the worst-case scenario as several respondents arrived on the private airport. But just as they thought all hope was lost, his phone rang with Lady 𝐬𝐬's contact number calling him. The principal didn't waste time to connect the call. "𝐬𝐬, what happened up there?" She was silent for a bit, before heaving a sigh and giving them their first good news since their flight. "We just arrived on 𝐸-Island. Izuku and Professor 𝐸 are safe. You're in 𝐸-Island. Even at its top speed, the jet that carried you needed at least 3 hours to reach 𝐸-Island. Well, it only took a minute to get here with green energy enveloping the jet and jumping through space." Wait, Nezu tried to process what she just said. "Are you saying that Izuku transported the entire jet directly to 𝐸-Island?" "Yes, and he did it unconsciously.